Yes. We are
sure
live.
you don't? We're live?
Yeah, we're pretty live.
How live are we?
Very live. So live that you can hear my voice on the interwebs.
On the interwebs?
You know the series of tubes?
How live are we?
Very live. So live that you can hear my voice. Uh-oh. What's going on? What do we got going on? Which one of you has the stream open? Duh.
I'm better now.
Joe's got the stream open.
Not anymore. But hey, did you hear that?
Rookie maneuver.
Hold on, because I don't think that was me. I think that was Scott, because I can't do that anymore.
Oh.
My bad. I'm sorry.
See that? He was trying to frame me.
You notice he didn't even say anything?
It was almost like the JFK assassination. He was trying to freaking frame me, dude. Bastard.
Oh, it's okay. I'll be editing this part out.
I was distracted.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realize it.
That's what happens.
Sorry.
That's what happens when you drink your breakfast, Scott, a little early for your liquid breakfast. Alrighty then. Anyway, so yes, we're live, ladies and gentlemen. As only we can do. So tonight, on tonight's live edition here of Down the Rabbit Hole on YouTube, live on YouTube worldwide, we're going to be getting into the JFK files, and I'm rolling my eyes as I say this. I know most people would think, Popeye, aren't you super excited?
Yeah, right.
No, not super excited at all. Can I just tell you, pretty sure I already know who did it, and I don't think they're going to release anything in those files that tells me anything new.
No.
Just a hunch. Slight hunch. Could be wrong.
Doubt it.
Yeah, no. Look, all they're going to show in those files is stuff that researchers have been saying for years. Meaning, they won't come out right and say, for instance, there was a cable that somebody found. It was a memo, and they last night, within like 2 or 3 hours, somebody had found it, and they posted it. And I don't remember what website it was, but they posted a shot of it, and then the whole thing. And in it talked about how they thought that there were, and I believe it was the FBI, thought that there was a shot. A shot had to have come from the triple underpass and come through the windshield and hit Kennedy in the throat.
Back into the left.
Right? So, well, that was the first shot that hit him was he gets shot in the throat. Because the first shot that rang out missed him. And you see in the film, Kennedy kind of turns his head. He stops waving, and he's like, hey, what was that? And then, boom, second shot comes through the windshield, hits him right in the throat.
Yeah, and you can see on the Zapruder film that he's actually grabbing his throat.
Yeah, he reaches up and he goes for his throat, and then Jackie leans over like, hey, what's wrong? Third shot takes Kennedy in the shoulder, and you'll see on the Zapruder film where he kind of lurches forward. Fourth shot misses Kennedy completely, hits Connolly. It's where it went through Connolly, through his back, and came out and hit him in the wrist, shattered his hand. And you'll see that shot, the fourth shot, when Kennedy shot in the shoulder with shot number 3, you'll see if it was a magic bullet, one bullet that did all of this damage, right? Coming through Kennedy's back and then coming out and going through John Connolly and into his wrist, right?
How come I can't have a bullet like that?
Right, exactly. Well, if Arlen Specter's magic bullet was so powerful, then John Connolly in the film wouldn't have been able to turn around and look at Jack while holding his Stetson, his hat, in the very hand that about half a second later was shattered by shot number 4, which missed Jack, came through Connolly and shattered his wrist. And then the last shot, which was the kill shot, that's the shot that took Jack right in the forehead, back and to the left. Like Costner said in the film, back and to the left.
Back and to the left.
You don't get that from a rear shot. You know what they told people when that came out? They actually told people that the reason why his head lurched backwards like that was not because he was shot from the front, but because the gases escaping from the front wound pushed
They acted like thrusters.
Yes. That's what they said. They said the pressure like thrust
my
his head
God.
back. That's
Lord
the official. That to this day is the
Ouch.
official. The official story behind it.
He's full of hot air.
They had the hell is his name? He's not on air anymore. He's long. I think he even died. It wasn't Sam Donaldson.
Oh, it was Tom Brokaw.
That's
Not
what-
Tom Brokaw. The other one.
Yeah, the one that's like Brokaw, but it's not. And it wasn't Sam Donaldson. It wasn't the other
Oh,
guy.
I can see him too. Dadgummit.
Yeah,
Oh, well.
and he came on and he's trying to convince everybody. I think he's the one that died of lung cancer. He did
Lung
like,
cancer, yeah.
He did like a Kennedy special, and then a couple years later, he ended up dying of lung cancer, and he was young. But he was reporting that day. He like made his bones that day as a young reporter, reporting about the assassination, and he was on TV. There's video of it. I can't remember his name right now, but there's video of it where he's telling people that the president was shot and his head lurched violently forward. And it's like, no, that's not true whatsoever. That's not true at all. Peter Jennings. Thank you, J.R. Foster, 1999 in the
Sweet
live
guy. Yeah, that was
chat.
excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for the listeners. Always, you guys are awesome. Peter Jennings, that's who it was. Yes. His head seemed to lurch violently forward. Bullshit. Oh, YouTube, are you going to demonetize my channel? Oh, wait, I don't monetize it, so I guess I can say that.
You're bad.
I know. They've never monetized
I'm sexually
my channel.
harassed by your language.
Are you, Joe?
Yes.
You should go join Antifa and go burn some shit down now.
I'm gonna go burn some shit.
God. Don't even get me started. Anyway, so that's for the and more section after we discuss this.
Yes.
As somebody put in the chat, watch Bill Hicks on JFK. He talks about this. Yes, I know. Love Bill Hicks. He did a great thing where he was when he was in London. And I can't remember the comedy special, but he was dressed up in like a duster and cowboy duster and cowboy hat and boots. And it was a special he did in London. Great ending was when he talks about, it's just a ride. That's how he ends it. But before that segment was when he was talking about the Kennedy assassination. And he's like, he's doing back and to the left, and he traces. He's like, hold on, let's see. Let's trace this back. Let's go backwards. And he takes his hand, from where Kennedy got shot in the forehead, and he starts like moving it back outwards, and he straightens it out, and he's like, seems like it's coming from somewhere over here towards that grassy knoll area. Look, I honestly think the headshot. I don't think it came from the grassy knoll. I think it came from the triple.
No.
I think it came from the triple underpass.
Sounds good to me.
And apparently, at least according to this one memo that came out yesterday in the document dump, that the federal government believed that a shot came from the triple underpass and through the windshield as well. And it did. I even did a show, or multiple shows, with Sherry Feister, who is an author and a forensic investigator. She's gone to court to testify in many court cases, either freeing people and or putting guilty people away in jail. And no, forensics, people can argue, well, forensics isn't the most exact science that everybody thinks it is. Maybe not, but there's certain aspects of it that are accurate. And she goes into detail in these 3 interviews I did with her. And, you can't refute it. She destroys the official story. She takes Arlen Specter's magic bullet theory and just smacks it around. It's impossible. You can listen to me and say, well, Popeye's a radio show host, and you could call me a pejorative label of conspiracy theorist. But let's see you call Sherry, who's a forensic specialist, somebody who testifies in court. So if the court feels that she's an expert in what she does, and her testimony is good enough to put people away or free them, perhaps maybe we should listen to what she has to say, forensically speaking, about the Kennedy assassination. You'd be quite surprised. Her and I did this 3-part series about it. It's called the JFK assassination, a forensic look. In fact, I'm going to remaster the audio from those shows. I decided yesterday to do this, and I'm going to put them back up on Federal Jack again. And add some images and stuff for you guys to what we were talking about. Amazing information. Blow your whole view of the Kennedy assassination out of the water if you're one of these people that still believes the official version of events, which I think is like 2% of the general public now. Pretty sure.
that it?
They said 61% of Americans don't buy into the official story, which
61?
I think. Yeah, I think
that's
it's more
low.
than that.
Yeah, last time they
it's
did
definitely more than that because I mean, it's unbelievable to think that 40% of the population actually buy into the official story.
Yeah, no. I think it's like
I would say it's probably more like 80.
Like 80.
I
I was
think
going to
it's
say,
like
4 out of
90.
5.
Dude, the last time, I think it was, I don't know, a couple years ago, 5-6 years ago, you can look this up. They did somewhere around the 50th anniversary, maybe. So within the past, like, 5 years. And they did a poll as to who thought, what the people thought. And it was somewhere in like 90% or 92% of the country thought that the government had some involvement, some way, shape, or form in the Kennedy assassination and covering it up. So, yeah. 68%. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Rosera in the chat room says that too, about 80%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So full of shit. I swear to God. Who do they poll? What do they go to, like, the DNC headquarters and poll people?
Dude. Statistics are
Question, where are the Democrats?
who cares?
Well, I'm saying, where supposedly, right, if you buy into the whole I don't believe in the two-party system. It's all bullshit. And I've said 1,000 times in the past few years, they've managed to get everybody that was thinking outside the box and looking at things from all these different directions. They've pulled everybody back into A or B. Doesn't matter what discussion topic it's about.
Yeah.
They've narrowed everything down to A or B. I hear people talking about, man, protesters, these protesters, they should just run them over and blah, 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 blah. I'm thinking to myself, you could be protesting something that you don't like. 2 years ago when Obama was the president, if you were protesting and they said that, you'd be like, oh, you see these liberals, they don't like us. But now, because it's, liberal protesters and people like Antifa, which if the people that are doing this stupid stuff can't figure out that you're just useful idiots and you're being used to create chaos so that the system then can then turn around and go, look, they're acting up. We need MRAPs in a police state and scanners at the mall. And we need all this stuff because you can't be too safe. I mean, you have Antifa terrorists and now you have a white guy shooting people up out of a window in Vegas, but we don't know why. And the cops won't give us any reason why. But guns, because the guns made him do it. Right, even though Dianne Feinstein said no new law would have stopped the massacre.
You don't realize that they're made of magic alloy that sends alpha waves to your brain and causes you to do things you wouldn't normally do. That's why they must get rid of them all.
Yeah, right.
Just saying.
By the way, do you know that the current gun laws in the country, do you know when they came about? They came about in the 60s after the slew of assassinations against people like Martin Luther King Jr., Bobby Kennedy, and John F. Kennedy. Because, they had to take guns away from the general public that were involved in no way, shape, or form in the assassination of any of those three men.
Right.
And ironically, there's enough evidence to show that the government was involved in all three assassinations.
Because the criminals, along with government, follow the law, right?
Oh, well, don't they? Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Wait. Hold the phones, Joe.
Seems like the only people that follow the law are the people that just want to be left alone. But we never get left alone. So we just end up, getting beat down, given this garbage that got released about the JFK stuff, which is crazy.
Well, I'll download the files and go through them because I'm sure the only thing like I said to Christina, I said, honestly, I don't think there's going to be a smoking gun. I think they'll probably release stuff that talks bad about JFK, makes him look negative in a light. Maybe, he was he a commie? Did he have Addison's disease? Like attack his personality, first they assassinate him, then they'll assassinate his character because it's lived on for so long.
Right.
So there'll be that probably in there, here or there. And I'm sure that we'll find stuff that, like I said, there was that one that said that they had thought that a shot could have come. But it was reported that the first shot, and according to the memo, and I'm paraphrasing here because I don't have it in front of me, but they talked openly about the first shot coming through the windshield and hitting Kennedy in the throat, so which would mean that Oswald couldn't have done it unless he somehow shot boomerang bullets. So, you're going to find little things like that in there that'll validate what we've talked about to a degree, but you're not going to find anybody saying this person did it or here's more evidence. It'll be little pieces like that if they're not redacted. I found one that was on Martin Luther King Jr. and the whole thing was redacted. It was except for like the date and the file number of the file. It was still redacted. Like, oh, here, you can look at it. You can't read anything on it, but sure, here's the file.
Well, it's like I posted on Facebook, right? I said, don't expect the JFK files to incriminate the government when it's the government releasing the files, right? So I think it's just going to be more. It's going to be more bullshit to sort of try and attempt to push the official story, and maybe a few things will slip through the cracks, and that's when it comes down to people actually pouring through all the documents and looking at everything. But I find it very interesting the couple of hundred pages that they're withholding due to quote unquote national security issues. I mean, those are the ones that I want to know. What national security issues could apply today from something that happened back in '63?
Well, unless somebody that's still in power, I don't know, people like, I don't know, people in current political office or recently retired presidents like the late H.W. Bush, former CIA director, even though he vehemently denies ever being the director of the CIA. It's fact that George Bush, H.W.
Isn't there some indication that he was in Dallas at the time?
Well, he might. There's some speculation. People believe. I've seen evidence to allude towards him being there, but I don't think he would have been an assassin. He would have been more like.
No, he wouldn't have been an assassin, but he would have been taking more of the role of like a coordinator or something like that,
or helping out in some way, shape, or form. Yes, he would have been on the team.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't doubt that. I don't know if I buy the whole bullshit about Ted Cruz's father. Being
that's too much of a. That's a little much for me to.
I don't know. I didn't see when it first came out during the presidential election. People were like, "Popeye, you see, look, the JFK assassination. Shouldn't you be interested in this?" I'm like, no, absolutely not. This just sounds like total bullshit. And I still really haven't seen the evidence that I saw. It just did not ring true to me. I don't know who originally came up with that, and that's now their favorite thing whenever you talk about the Kennedy assassination, and that they'll talk about conspiracy theorists, right? That's a word that's being thrown around constantly. Well, these conspiracy theorists. I don't know if the general public knows this, but the term conspiracy theory was actually invented by the CIA. Now, I don't have the memo written down in front of me. I used to have it written down. I don't know if I still have the number. Let me see.
Yeah, and it was coined by the CIA because of the JFK assassination.
Yeah, I used to actually have the memorandum number that you can look up. But if you Google CIA created conspiracy theory or term conspiracy theory, you'll see this. And basically, it was put out there to solidify the idea that Oswald was a lone gunman and acted alone. Because you had people right after the assassination saying, well, this doesn't make sense. You had independent investigators, people like Penn Jones Jr. or Mae Brussel and others started to investigate this. And they said, no, this does not make any sense whatsoever. And they were the original alternative media. So to attack them and to discredit them, the CIA came up with the pejorative label of conspiracy theorist. Now, the term may not have been new because I got into it. I did a video about this, and I got into it with this professor from Georgia who used to be on this like skeptic society, I don't even know if he's still around anymore, but he made it his like thing to go after me and a few other people. And weekly, he would do like a debunking show, and he would try to debunk what we would say. Except, first of all, the term debunk, we have to stop misusing that too. You can only debunk something that's filled with bunk, which is garbage, lies, propaganda. You can't debunk the truth. Okay, you can try to say you're debunking the truth, but you're not debunking anything. You're just promoting propaganda and putting, whitewashing. You're not actually debunking anything. You can only debunk something that's full of shit. Okay? Let's just be straight up and honest. So, when they say, "Oh, we're debunking the conspiracy theorists," no, you're not. You're not debunking anything. It's like the book by David Ray Griffin. He wrote a book called Debunking 9/11 Debunking, because you had popular mechanics and everybody running around, "Oh, we're going to debunk these 9/11 myths." And he explains how they misuse the term, and then he rips the 9/11, the debunking of 9/11 truth apart in this book. I mean, he does so thoroughly, just viciously. I mean, not nasty. He's very nice, but viciously in terms of logic and facts.
He actually technically debunks it.
Yes, he debunks their bullshit. That's the word debunking. So when they use conspiracy theory, it's a label. It's a pejorative term, and they want you. This is the problem. They misuse the word conspiracy itself. The misuse of the word conspiracy is also highly rampant in society and in the news and in the mainstream media and in popular culture. People now say conspiracy or conspiracy theory constantly, but they misuse the term. So they say conspiracy, and in reference to, they'll say, well, it's not a conspiracy, but yeah, these guys were actually doing something bad. Well, yeah, then that is a conspiracy. I think we need to look up the definition of the term conspiracy.
Are you getting all wrapped up in definitions again?
Yeah,
don't let the facts get in the way of a good story.
I know. We should just, because right now definitions of anything are under assault, so it really doesn't matter.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, I mean, but that's the truth. That's why they misuse that word conspiracy.
Oh, of course.
And then you'll hear people, they'll say, "Oh, well, you believe in wolves or werewolves or monsters or Bigfoot or Sasquatch or UFOs or ghosts. That's conspiracy." No, that's paranormal. That's not conspiracy.
Yeah, right. Has nothing to do with a conspiracy. Right. What the hell's that?
Conspiracy, by definition, you can look this up, unless they've changed it already, but by definition, in the Webster's Dictionary, even in the Oxford English Dictionary, the word conspiracy, you can look it up. It says conspiracy, meaning two or more people to do something, plotting to do something nefarious. So if Joe, Scott, and I sat down and said, "Hey, man, let's go rob the 7-Eleven up the street," and we go and rob it, and then for whatever reason we're unsuccessful and we get arrested, do you know that one of the things they're going to charge all three of us with is, surprise, surprise, conspiracy to commit robbery? So it's an actual legal charge. The term means two or more people getting together to do something bad, i.e. a plot. Like, let's go plot to go do this, or let's go plot to do that. Let's go plot to fly 767s into buildings filled with passengers and people. Not lots of fuel, though, just enough to make a big fireball and make it look like it's going to bring the towers down into their own footprint. Oh, look, they fell. Oh, how'd that happen?
How did that happen?
I'm sure there was no explosives in the buildings beforehand.
My God.
I'm sure that.
What a horrible design this was.
Right.
Let's not do it again.
Oh, dude, don't get me started. When people say to me, "Well, those buildings, they were built like soda cans. They were hollow on the inside. They were just the outside is what held them up." And I'm like, dude, that's not true at all.
Was it what was it, like suspenders?
Yeah, like, do you even know how buildings work? That's not how physics works, my friend. Sorry. That's not true at all. It had 47 core columns, and they got thicker as you went down to the base.
And then they wore a set of architectural suspenders to hold everything up.
Oh, just
apparently.
The pancake theory. And then even the government admitted that the pancake theory on 9/11 was bullshit. And by the way, they never ever mentioned Building 7, and it was like 5 or 7 years, and then finally they come.
Yeah,
out
I was
with
about to
their
say
report.
let's not even mention the building that collapsed demolition style and wasn't even hit by an aircraft.
without being hit by an airplane, Scott. And then when when NIST finally looked into it, they said, I quote, I shit you not, this is in the report. It says, and I quote, a miracle occurred when the building collapsed.
Well,
Oh,
yeah.
It's that same law of physics that gets left out the window that allows Kennedy's bullet, that magic bullet, to be like a fucking boomerang, just whip back and forth. Sure. No. Sorry, I don't buy it. I just don't buy it. And I don't think really you're going to find a smoking gun in the Kennedy files. I mean, I'm going to go through them. It'll take some time. I just don't. I really hope people don't do what they did with the WikiLeaks stuff which I've already seen them start to do. This irritates me when there's a document dump because the documents will be out like an hour and people are like, oh my God, and they're writing articles on their blogs. Click my link. Look, I totally deciphered what this is about. Look. And you're like, and then you read the memo or whatever they're putting up, and it could be anything. And half the time they're taking something that's in there completely out of context. And they're talking in code. Well, but do you know that? Yes. Really? Do you have a key that you could sit with it and break down what the code they're speaking? Have you figured it out? Are you a cryptographer? How do you know they're talking in code? I just know because I saw a YouTube video that said they're talking in code.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, it just irritates me, man. When I got into this, we actually spent weeks or months researching something before we put a YouTube video together about it. Now people, you know what I mean. Documents will get dumped and within an hour. People have a 4-page essay. I was correct. The New World Order is just as I said it was. Rah! Whatever it could be about. And most of these people don't have even a really deep level of understanding of what they're talking about. So they go, everything is attacked or talked about on the basis of this little 2% of information, overall what they really understand instead of the bigger picture.
And that's not to say that there wasn't weird stuff in the WikiLeaks files because there was, but
no, there's tons
exactly
of weird things in there. But I'm saying people need to take more than 30 seconds. Understanding. I've researched Kennedy's assassination since I was in my teenage years. It's going on over. It's got to be 20-something years now since I started investigating this. Okay. I was 14 or 15 when I really got into it. And I have to tell you, dude, there are times that I come across stuff that even with all this research and understanding of the jargon and the language and then, researching other stuff over the years, right? Understanding how the deep state works, all of that. There's stuff I have to read 2 or 3 times and then think about what I know and see what how that coincides with all the other research that I've done. So going through the JFK files isn't going to make anybody you might glean a little bit of information from it, but people aren't going to really learn anything. People, the general public that doesn't know isn't going to learn anything. Some of the stuff might sound surprising if somebody writes an article and shows that they said something like the triple underpass thing or something else, but they're not going to understand the full context of that. That's why I posted the interview of the 3 shows I did with Sherry Feister. Because I saw that and I was like, well, people, if they're going to start seeing this in the mainstream of, they're talking about this, or this, they have to understand that these are theories, or this is not theories, but this is stuff that's been presented, over the years that's already been out there. So if you're going to see something... if
people are going to dig through the current files, they need to actually go back and do their research on everything else that has come out.
Yes. Well, you need to read, if you're really interested in JFK.
That way you have context, like you said.
Well, dude, there's got to be 30 or 40 books out there now that I would recommend. Real ones, not like Gerald Posner's garbage book, which you could just use for kindling, or if you're out in the middle of the woods and you run out of toilet paper, it's always good for that too. people like him or Bill O'Reilly or all these other people that do the official story, Oswald was the shooter. Yet when Bill O'Reilly first got into this, he was working for Access Hollywood. He had a different tune. He didn't think Oswald was the shooter. He contemplated whether Oswald was innocent and other information. So, Geraldo Rivera, too. I did a show called JFK, A Case for Conspiracy. One of my favorite broadcasts I've ever done. I aired a ton of audio evidence in there. One of the pieces was a piece done by a reporter that worked for Geraldo back in the day. Not on Fox News, but back when he had his own show. When he had like his own, show, and he'd have reporters go out and do different segments. Well, they did one about the Kennedy assassination, and it was about the strange death of Lee Bowers, which is what they titled it. And Lee Bowers was a witness. He saw two guys by the grassy knoll. He was in a control tower for like a switching tower for the railroad, because there's the triple underpass where I have and other people have said that one of the shots came from, and Sherry Feister even proves it in that forensic show I did with her. She forensically shows that the shot came from there with ballistics. But where that shot came from, that railroad yard is right, like the triple underpass, if you're looking at it, would be on the right side, and then the grassy knoll would be to its left. So Lee overlooked all of this because he was in this tower sitting behind it. Lee Bowers, not Oswald. And he was looking down, and he got interviewed, and he testified that he saw, and his story had never changed, that he saw two guys behind the fence. One of them was dressed as a cop, and he had a rifle. And the other one was like shooing people away from the area and helping him, set up to shoot, which would mean you had a shooter and a spotter. That's a shooting team. Okay? That's SOP. Anybody that's been in the military would understand that, or that was a police officer, or involved any way, shape, or form, professional or any type of shooting situation like that understands what a spotter is, or even knows one is, knows why you'd have a two-man team. So Lee saw these spotters, the shooter and the spotter, in the parking lot on the other side of the wooden fence that stands at the top of the grassy knoll. And he said he saw a puff of smoke from their position, which would mean he saw a shot ring out. So a couple months later, or maybe a year or two later, he's dead in a single car accident after he testified. And in the interim between the shooting and when he died, he disappeared for a few days. And when he came back and reappeared, he was missing one of his fingers. And he said, "Oh, it happened in an accident." That's the kind of shit the intelligence agencies do. They torture you and cut a finger off and say, "You're going to talk? You're going to say anything else?" And then he was killed in a single car accident. Well, Geraldo did a report on this on his show. His guy did like a whole 5 or 10 minute segment on it about the case of Lee Bowers and everything. And then Geraldo, interviews the reporter at the end, and he's like, "So what do you think?" And the questions he's asking are so stupid. They're Larry King questions. You know what I mean when I say that? Like the most irrelevant, you could have he'd have Einstein on his show, and Larry King would be like, "So, what kind of ice cream do you like? The sky's blue. Isn't that a great color for the sky?" What?
Yeah, no questions of substance.
None. Zilcho. And I mean, he asked him like, "Well, was Lee Bowers murdered?" And he's like, "Well, it looks like that." But and you'd think Geraldo would be like, "Well, I mean, did the government lie about it?" Like, there's a bazillion questions I could come with right off the bat to start asking this reporter, but he didn't. So, I mean, at least they reported on it. They won't even report on that kind of stuff now. But it goes to show you that two of these mainstream reporters, talking heads, whatever, they're still in the, well, except I guess O'Reilly got fired, right, finally. But they're still out there in the public. He's still writing books, still purports to be a JFK expert. And yet, these guys did shows back in the day where they questioned the official story. Suddenly they're for it. Well, that's what happens when you get a little bit richer, because look at their bank accounts back then versus now. And
yeah, they moved up into the system, so now they got to toe the line and push the official narrative.
Yeah, if people really want to learn about JFK, and they want to learn about, I mean, read the files. Please download the files, go through them. But if you want to really learn and have an understanding as to like what was going on at the time and a better understanding of what you're going to find in those files, you need to start reading books. And I don't mean one or two. I mean, there's probably about 30 or 40 you could read. Nothing by the mainstream authors. One of the best places to go for JFK books is Trine Day Publishing, trineday.com. Trine, TRINEDAY.com. He doesn't pay me. I know the owner. He's a friend of mine, Chris Milligan. He does not pay me any money to say this stuff at all. He's a small independent publisher who's published more works of truth than any of these major publishing houses ever. I've had Chris on the show before. You can go back and listen in the archives if you're not familiar. Go to YouTube and just type in on my channel. Go to DTRH Radio Archives and go to my videos and just type in Chris, Kris, space M, and that should bring the episode with Chris Milligan up, and you can listen to it. And you can, he wrote a book about Skull and Bones. I believe Chris's father was in the company, and that's what got him. And he was always like a hippie. Him and St. John Hunt have a lot in common. St. John's father was obviously E. Howard Hunt. Now, I bet you, was he a conspiracy theorist too? E. Howard Hunt, the father, because, on his deathbed, he said, oh, LBJ was involved in Jack's murder, and, I knew all about it, and he named people like Cord Meyer, who was a CIA agent and a member of the elite. His wife was also one of Kennedy's lovers and ended up dead not too long after Jack was killed. Mary Meyer. There's a book about her. Very good book by Peter Janey. People should go out and read that book. Buy it and read it. Mary's Mosaic. Talks all about how her affair with Kennedy, but it wasn't just, sex and craziness. She actually loved Jack and he loved her. They knew each other from when they were younger. And there was always a connection between the two of them. And she got Jack to smoke cannabis in the White House. And she got him to try things like LSD and mushrooms. And his perspective shifted. And he saw things on a different level. And she was having this profound effect on him, which he was then carrying back into his work as the president. She was one of his trusted advisors. She was very good friends with him. And they became lovers, even though she was married. It happens. Nobody's perfect, whatever. I'm not defending it, but it happens. And then, right after he was killed, she was killed. Her husband was a CIA agent, and he was directly involved in Jack's murder. I'm pretty sure she had her thoughts that she thought he might have done it. So, yes, Kennedy smoked cannabis, and he tripped on LSD and mushrooms, and he did so with Mary Meyer. I mean, that's one of the reasons Cord was willing to... I mean, Cord had his own beliefs, too. He was one of these right-wing, Kennedy's a communist, idiots. But his wife was also Kennedy's lover, or one of Kennedy's lovers, so why not? That would drive any man to be pissed and perhaps, want to do something drastic. So you could see how even these elitist CIA agents in the higher echelons of the company are controlled. Because I'm sure they were like, oh, he's screwing your wife. What kind of a piece of crap? Don't you just want to get back at him? Very simple. They use the basics all the time. Look how they divide this country. It's on the basics. Everybody was thinking outside the box. Everybody was thinking all different directions and starting to solve issues and starting to say, hey, this whole police state thing, this isn't good, And when I'm about to say goes right in with this racial division that they put out. That black people and Latinos and other minorities might say, well, white people don't know what it's like to be oppressed or don't know what it's like to be screwed with by the cops. But we do. You see, more white people were waking up and starting to see that it's not just black people or Latinos or whatever. And although people could say, well, that's a racist thought if they say, well, it's them, it's not me, so I don't care, right? But in not everyone, but in many aspects, white middle-class America was not tuned into any of that because they were so busy working constantly and literally, working 16-hour days, 12-hour days, to the working their fingers to the bone, so to speak, to support their family because money's tight and that's where their focus was always. Even if they saw an injustice happening, they were too busy with work to care, right? And it's the truth. I mean, it's unfortunate, but it's the truth. And white people have been shot by cops and harassed by police in the past. But let's be honest, predominantly minorities get screwed with, right? So they were getting irritated that nobody else was paying attention to this, right? But in reality, white people were starting to experience, white middle-class America was experiencing the same thing. Little old ladies getting shot by cops for not signing a ticket. There was a lady that got shot in a church parking lot because she wouldn't sign a ticket and she rolled the window up. And for whatever reason, she was scared of the cop or whatever. And the cop lunged through the window to grab her and grabbed her by the neck. So she panicked and stepped on the gas and took off. And because he, quote unquote, felt in fear for his life, he shot her. And she was like a 60-something-year-old grandmother who was in a church parking lot. No guns, no nothing. Nobody got pissed and rioted about that. But it was one of... And they should have, okay? There should have been some anger about it. I'm not being a smartass when I said there should have been some anger, but nobody really got angry about that. But it started to build. And eventually people were getting angry. And they were starting to say things like CNN was running a report, hey, how come the cops in Anaheim are running around dressed like, G.I. Joe? In fact, Joe and I did a show about this. And we were talking about the cops in Anaheim. And we said, we're having a hard time differentiating who's a cop and who's special forces. Some of them had, patches that said police on them. But if you saw them sideways or you couldn't see the patch that said cops and you looked at them, they were wearing BDUs. And they were camis. So it wasn't like they were black or they were tan or, khaki color or something. No. They were...
Yeah, and I remember seeing those photos. It was absolutely insane.
Right. They shut Anaheim,
it was
California.
Crazy. They look like troops out in Fallujah or something.
Right. Just Google anybody it happened the same year Ferguson did. So what, 3-4 years ago, whenever Ferguson was. It's that same time frame. And Anaheim happened and people were like, hey, what the hell's going on? Why do we have a police state? Why do we have cops driving around in MRAPs? And why do we don't need SWAT teams? This is a bit out of hand. What the hell's going on? And the next thing you know, Ferguson happens, and they made it about black people versus white people, right? And they got the people in St. Louis so incensed. Yes, they were already pissed because a white cop shot a black kid. But how incensed were they? They weren't rioting until after the media kept telling people, oh, hands up, don't shoot. Hands up, don't shoot. You had congressmen in Florida Congress, hands up, don't shoot. Except that turned out to be a bullshit story. The kid who was with Michael Brown that got shot, his friend, admitted later on that he lied and made that up. That was never said to the cops, and that he never had his hands up saying, hands up, don't shoot. What happened? And I'm not saying the kid deserved to die. Right, the whole situation was just messed up. But
even the DOJ, with the autopsy report, they admitted. I mean, he was shot in the top of the head, which would show that he was running towards the cop with his head down, to tackle him.
Right, and the cop, which was consistent with the cop's story. Now that I'm not defending police brutality. I'm not defending any of it. But what I'm saying is they took that incident and
it was a false narrative.
Yes, the narrative was twisted. The event was very real, but they took the narrative and they twisted it. And all they had to do was twist it enough to stoke the anger. And the next thing you know, the people in St. Louis are rioting because they were already pissed off about police brutality and inequality and perhaps maybe even jobs and low income. There was a lot of factors. But the government, the powers that shouldn't be, the media, they understood this. They understood this. And they used that anger and they twisted it and they tweaked it and they made it about race and they made those people riot. And then when the people started to riot, that's when you started to hear people like conservatives and libertarians and other alternative media people that we all know start to say, well, it's a good thing those cops had those MRAPs because look at those people rioting. And I turned around and I said, that's pretty effed up that you're saying that because 2-3 weeks ago, you were denouncing the fact that they even have them period, for any type of protests. You were worried that if you were protesting freedom or your libertarian values or the conservative values or the Second Amendment or the First Amendment or whatever, the Constitution or Sam Houston or whatever else.
Yeah, you remember all the Patriot and Tea Party types were like, it's a police state. We're all going to be put in FEMA camps.
Right, until black people
martial
started rioting.
law and all that stuff, and that all completely changed.
Right, until black people started rioting. And then they were told to be afraid of the black rioters because oogie boogie black people are going to get you. We're all humans. I don't give a shit if someone's skin color is black, if they're Latino, they're Asian. We're all humans. We look maybe a little different on the outside. We all operate the same on the inside. We're all humans, okay? They're getting us to be afraid of each other and hate each other over stupid, stupid shit. And I have no more patience for this, so I'm not going to be nice about it and sugarcoat it and just say, they're getting us to fight over stupid things, people, and we should hold hands and sing Kumbaya. No, what I'm telling you is this is retarded, okay? This is absolutely retarded. We figured all of this out a very long time ago, and then suddenly we're arguing over basic shit again. Why? Ask yourself, why? Who's perpetrating this? Who's making us fight and argue with each other and hate on one another? The powers that shouldn't be. That's who. I don't see my neighbors
Their
going out.
Their mouthpiece, the media.
Yeah, I don't see my neighbor going out and being like, I'm going to go lead the New World Order and get the whole country to hate and be mad at each other. I don't see many people doing that. What I see are prominent celebrities, paid mouthpieces, useful idiots, and the powers that shouldn't be. That's what I see. And I see them pushing this because they want divide. They want people to be afraid. They want people to be separated from each other. They don't want people to realize their true power. And they can't give up any of that. They refuse to. I mean, in reality, it's really a stupid concept. There's more than enough on the planet for everybody. Right? We should all be working together and strive to be like exploring outer space. To the rest of the universal community, we are in kindergarten. And we are a very primitive planet who you probably shouldn't get too close to. Because we're like the monkeys at the zoo who fling shit at each other. For real. That's what we are. We're monkeys in a cage, and you can't get too close to those mammals over on planet Earth because they're kind of cool, but they still haven't gotten out of kindergarten yet, and they kill each other over grains of sand and over preconceived notions that have been just poured into their heads from the time they're children. Idiotic preconceived notions about things.
I mean, think of the timeline, right? Think about like towards the end of the Bush administration, how everybody was waking up to the bullshit, right? And then once Obama got in, that's, when the division started to begin, right? You saw like the Tea Party pop up, then you saw like Occupy Wall Street, and you started to see this division occur. And you saw like one segment kind of being propped up, right, by the Democrats, right, because they were in power at the time. So you saw the whole push for like anti-police, police brutality, all that stuff. And then you had like a whole segment on the other side that was like being alienated, and it was like stewing and bubbling and building up. And then Trump gets elected, and it allows that other side to boom, it created even more of a flashpoint, right? Because you propped up one side, you caused another side to feel alienated and build their anger up. And then once Trump comes in, they're able to like unleash that anger. And then you get like this situation to where you have one extreme on one side creating another extreme on the other side. And as each side becomes more extreme, one side gets more extreme, it just causes the other side to become more extreme. And you just see the division and the polarization like increasing at an exponential rate. And, at some point it's going to there's going to be a flashpoint. There's going to be something that happens. And, that's when they could move in declare their martial law, and the powers that shouldn't be get their order out of chaos.
Well, that's what's going on. It's exactly what's going on. It's ordo ab chaos. And it just frustrates me to see people. I know we're talking about the JFK files, and I'll get back onto that in a second. It's just, I had.
Well, I mean, it all ties in because that's when it all that the
was
JFK thing was that was the seminal event that really opened the door to where we're at now.
It changed everything. It was a linchpin event, and it literally changed every little thing. It's the keystone, if you will. That's really what's going on. It's literally the keystone. And if people, that's why when people say to me, why do you care about the Kennedy assassination, Popeye? It happened so long ago. Well, who cares? Well, because that's when
everything. The coup happened. That was when the overthrow of the American government took place.
Well, the government was already kind of overthrown, but Kennedy was that was the
total. No, it was when they took total control.
That was the nail in the coffin, so to speak, and what led to what we see today. When people ask, "Oh, well, how does that matter?" Well, because Kennedy was fighting for your freedom. Well, whether you understand that or not, and I'm not. People are like, "Oh, he did this or he did that." Yeah. Early on in his presidency and in the beginning, before the whole Bay of Pigs and a few other events, Kennedy had a vision, and he was doing what he thought was right. But then he really started to see what was going on, and he didn't want war in Vietnam. He thought the Bay of Pigs. He inherited the Bay of Pigs invasion, the whole plan that was already being drawn up before he was the president. He inherited that, and he didn't fumble that. That's another misconception. Prouty talked about this. I'm putting up a lot of interviews with Prouty too. I've been working on a bunch of stuff for YouTube, but which will be coming out in the next few weeks. But one of the things is Fletcher Prouty talks about the Bay of Pigs. In fact, if you go to federaljack.com/JFK, federaljack.com/JFK, it's a downloadable JFK archive section I have, and the shows I've done on JFK are in there, and stuff from Fletcher Prouty's in there, including this video. And the interview was shot probably like 20 years ago and then uploaded to like Google Video, or first it was on VHS tape, then it was uploaded to Google Video and YouTube and stuff. So it's been around a while, but it's Fletcher Prouty. Just go on YouTube if you wanted to find it too, and type in Fletcher Prouty on Vietnam. But you can download the video for yourself if you want, right at federaljack.com/JFK. There's a ton of stuff there. And you'll hear him talk about the Bay of Pigs invasion, and he explains, he talks about Vietnam and the Bay of Pigs. And he explains in depth about the Bay of Pigs and what really went on. And Kennedy had signed off on air cover for the ground troops on the contingent that they had to leave at a certain time. They had it all planned out, and the planes had to take off at a certain time in order to get into the air and hit the Russian MiG jets, which the Cubans had, while they were still on the ground. Because the planes that the Americans were using, because they didn't want to give them any jets, because how could Cuban dissidents get jets? Obviously, some state agency would have had to have given them, right? And at the time, the whole thing for Kennedy with the Bay of Pigs invasion was he was going to allow it to continue, but the U.S. could not be, you couldn't have U.S., he didn't want U.S. Navy vessels involved in that. He didn't want any of that stuff. Okay, he did not want to have war. He was, if this small invasion force could have gone onto the island and done their thing and worked, that's fine, because there's plausible deniability. But what most people don't know is the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the warmongers in Washington were trying to drag him into an open invasion of Cuba, meaning sending the Coast Guard, the Navy, the Marines, the Air Force, and the Army actually to invade the island of Cuba.
Yeah, he was trying to keep the operation as minimal as possible.
Yeah, well, yes, but the Warhawks were trying to go full-blown war on Cuba, and that's what led about to the whole Cuban Missile Crisis and all this other stuff, which then he worked out with Khrushchev and everything. Where, Kennedy realized that there was, and this is fact, you can go see this, he realized that there were people behind the scenes on both ends, and Khrushchev understood this too, that there was a power behind the presidency. It didn't matter what country you were in. And they were pushing for war. Now, we all know what that power is. We call it the powers that shouldn't be, New World Order, whatever you want to call it. But the New World Order is more of an abstract idea than a group. It's really just an agenda. But the Illuminati, whatever you want to call them, right? They understand that these people were running things behind the scenes. So Kennedy and Khrushchev actually had a hotline that went from the White House all the way over to the Kremlin, right to Khrushchev's office, so that they could pick up the phone. Like, if something happened, Kennedy could pick up and say, look, it's not us. I don't know what's going on, but it's not us. Khrushchev could do the same thing because they had that happen a couple times. So they wanted to, avert World War III. They understood this. They knew this. So in order to avert World War III and not have to deal with that, right, because that would be really bad, they had this line installed. And that's how miscommunications between those two countries stopped, because of a simple thing like a phone line between the two offices. And people thought that was horrific. How could you talk to the Russians? Are you a commie sympathizer? Are you stupid? Are you absolutely stupid with that train of thought and thinking? And it's the same idiotic thinking that you see being pushed today. Well, you put a Russia Today video up, you must be a Russian. You must be you voted for Trump, didn't you? You helped Russia get Trump in. I mean, that's
how dare Trump shake Putin's hand?
Yeah, seriously.
How evil.
And by the way, I'm not defending Trump. He's a politician like anybody else.
Yeah,
whatever. I'm not defending him.
But there's a thing called diplomacy, right?
But yeah, well, don't you want to not have war? I mean, that's the way it should be. But no. But see, again, the general public, they did it again, Scott. A couple years ago, nobody wanted to go to war with Syria. Nobody wanted any more war. And in fact, everybody was tired of wars. Iraq and Afghanistan really took the piss and vinegar out of everybody, and they just wanted everybody to come home. So what did they do? They slowly drip of fear. Oh, Al-Qaeda's going to, it's not Al-Qaeda anymore. It's ISIS. ISIS is going to come cut troops' heads off. They're going to come kill troops' families. Let's try to get the troops inflamed and pissed off. And then that didn't work, and all these retarded threats didn't work. So then they had to start having events that are vaguely connected to ISIS. Not really, but they could be connected to ISIS. And now everybody wants to go bomb Syria and Assad. And everybody wants to go fight in the Middle East but we're not really sure what country that we should fight in, because ISIS is kind of spread all over and doesn't really have a country or a homeland. But hey, we'll just invade everybody else's backyard and keep fighting and dying. Woohoo! Let's go kill.
Well, yeah, and also the whole Middle East situation. I think everybody in the U.S. is burned out on that, so they had to pivot to another thing. And look, we got North Korea, Kim Jong-un.
Yep.
He's the new boogeyman. And this goes back to the whole thing that, a lot of people in, alternative media or whatever, people I guess have been talking about for a long time, right? The Asian pivot, the whole Middle Eastern thing, it just doesn't fly anymore with the American public. Everyone's sick of being in the Middle East. So we got to create a new boogeyman. And, there's North Korea.
And ironically, everybody's willing to go bomb him. We should go bomb North Korea. Those people are brainwashed. We'd be freeing them. Drop a couple. I love when people say we should just drop a couple nukes on that country.
Well, I mean, he's a perfect boogeyman, right? Because there's almost no way that you can defend him. He runs a totalitarian regime, and there's really no way that anybody could defend anything he does. But
not only that, Scott, but you can't even refute their bullshit.
But he's there to be the boogeyman, though.
But you can't even refute their bullshit about him. Because it's not like you can be like, well, they're like Gaddafi. Well, he was an evil dictator. He was this, he was that. Gaddafi wasn't a saint, but he was doing a lot more for his country, and Libya was in a way better state than since it is now. We sent it back to third world status. I mean, he was buying people homes. They were putting high-speed rail in. They were talking about water.
He was trying to build up Africa.
Yeah, he was building the whole nation. He was
creating an African currency.
Yeah. Can't have that. Can't have that. So, they go in and they kill him and they take his ass out, and look what they did to Libya. Now, it's just, even with that, though, you could refute that. When they were bombing the shit out of Libya, I remember putting up stories, and Susan Lindauer was coming on, and Webster Tarpley was over in... he was over there, and they were sent in Libya with a fact-finding mission, and they were sending videos of war crimes back. And we made a whole website. We had to make a special website because we were getting attacked, including by the IDF. One of the guys, James, that does the IT work on the back end, he's been on the show before, and we talked about this. We actually got
they were literally like genociding black Africans over there.
And we had the war crime footage. Like, it was like it was footage that could have been used at a war crimes tribunal. I still have it, and I put it up on Federal Jack. Susan came to me because nobody else would put it up, and nobody else wanted to put it on their site. And so we had to build a special site for it because we knew it was going to get attacked. And the site got attacked. We got accused of publishing child pornography because there was a video showing what the insurgents had done to, or whatever, terrorists had done to this kid, this Libyan kid. They shoved a pole up his ass, and it came out right above in the front, right above his hip bone, like it penetrated. And he was laying in the hospital on this hospital bed, and obviously the kid's naked, but he's laying on a hospital bed with a pole shoved to him, and they're trying to save his life. And they had recorded these instances to show this is what's going on. So I knew I couldn't put any of this on YouTube, but we had it hosted on our own site and with own video players and everything. It was custom built. Like, we spent like a week custom building the site just for this purpose, and it was up for a little bit over a year. And in that year, our server got attacked unmercifully. Dude, just everybody you could imagine, every government agency, I would sit and talk to James, and I'd be like, hey, check the server, and he'd literally, because he'd be able to see where the IP addresses were coming in from, and he'd be tracing them, and he's like, oh, look, the IDF is attacking the website right now, and he showed me a screenshot. The Israeli Defense Forces. So, like, obviously Mossad, right? You have them involved with every terrorist organization, and the Israelis are involved, whether or not people realize it, behind the scenes with pretty much everything that we do. So, whether it's overt or covert. So, why would they be attacking Federal Jack? Oh, well, because they were attacking the website that hosted all the terror videos. And I think we titled it obamasLibya.com. And it went viral. It was all over the world in like the first 48 hours, dude. That website, the server kept crashing. We had so many people going to it. They had to like free up other space. They had to move stuff around. It was ridiculous. And then we started getting hit with like DDoS attacks. And next thing you know, they went as far as to going after our server name with ICANN.
Oh wow!
Or the
domain name?
Yeah, the domain name with ICANN. We had. I mean, dude, they had. Then they called our server company, the hosting company, and they told them that we were, or they sent in complaints that we had child pornography. And what they did was they used, even the guy at the guy at the domain at the hosting company said, he's like, dude, you guys really pissed somebody off. He's like, I've never seen this kind of stuff before. He's like, this is the kind of stuff that you expect like state agencies to do. They received something like 200,000 complaints about child pornography on our website in less than like 20 minutes, the guy told me. And that's why they took us down, because all of a sudden they just got inundated with complaints. And I'm like, you didn't think that maybe it was a bot? I mean, when was the last time you heard?
Of course it was a bot.
200,000 people getting together to do
It was
anything.
an entire botnet reporting the same thing.
Right, but because it was a botnet, and you see, that's the beauty of it. See what they did there was they did a botnet. That way it looked like you had all these different people coming from different IP addresses complaining about me or complaining about the website. So they shut it down. Yep. And then they investigated it, and the guy, I spoke to him on the phone, and he called me back, and he was like, we apologize for taking the site down, because they had it down for like 2 days while they investigated everything, and they put it back up, and they said they opened an investigation onto who did the complaints, because they were like, obviously this was done on purpose. And I was like, you think? And I said to the guy, there's evidence of war crimes on there. That's why they want it shut down. And at first the guy was skeptical because he hadn't seen the site. And he's like, well, sir, we have to take these threats, or, we view these as threats, and we have to take this kind of stuff seriously. And I was like, well, here's serious. There's war crimes being committed against people right now in your name, and we're trying to expose them, and the people that don't want them exposed are the ones reporting us for child pornography. So maybe you should just go do your research. Do your investigation. Go ahead. Guarantee you won't find anything on there that's wrong. And they did. They took a couple days, and they came back, and they apologized profusely because they were like, now they realized they had taken our website down, and it could have cost. They always look at things in the cost of like money and business sense. And they were like, we're sorry for any damages we've cost you. They gave us a bunch of free server time. Like they prorated us like a free month or free 2 months or whatever it was at the time, because they realized that like we were victims and the system had been abused by whoever, and that we lost out because of it. And they went and fixed everything. The problem was the server for Obama's Libya at the time and Federal Jack were one and the same. It was the same server, just different sites. And when they attacked the server multiple times, then they would take Federal Jack down. So we finally had to hide Obama's Libya on like a separate server in a separate place.
Wow. And going back to the whole North Korea being the new boogeyman situation, today I heard on the news that Britain, the UK, they're now blaming North Korea for the whole WannaCry ransomware attack that hit all their was it the NHS, their medical service and all that stuff? Remember when all that was in the news?
Even though WannaCry was admittedly created and released by the NSA? Google it.
So
go
now
on Google, which is the NSA's own
now
search engine.
North Korea are the ones who perpetrated that. That's what the UK is saying.
Okay, sure. Sure. Right. Same people that can't turn their lights on at night. Google North Korea at night, ladies and gentlemen, and you'll see what I'm talking about. And I say use Google, and people are like, why do you advertise for them? Because it's the NSA search engine. It just proves my point even more. If you look in their search engine, and you'll see. I mean, even that stuff is still there. Well, I mean, it may disappear eventually, but you can use their own shit, and you can search, and you'll see all this stuff. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's right in your face. So reasons like this, all this stuff that we're talking about, are reasons why I don't trust that the CIA will release any information about Kennedy's assassination whatsoever.
Bingo.
That's useful. Or they'll give you enough. They know that there's so much information. Look, think about it this way. They know that there's a certain amount of information that's already out there. There's a ton of it. They know there's so much info out there with all the books that have been written. So they release enough info that will verify what's already been written, maybe, here or there. But they're not going to release any smoking guns. Why? Why were there certain documents that were locked away under national security? That's bullshit. That's
a lot of people are speculating that Trump may have put out kind of a veiled kind of coded thing whenever he said, I had no choice, but we have to delay the release of some of these files. It makes you wonder, because I mean he wanted all the files to be put out. He's the one that told them to do that, and it just makes you wonder if they pulled him into that room, right? Like Bill Hicks talks about.
They did that the first day when he went to go meet Obama. That's why he came out. And
I don't know, man. Maybe they just decided to do it now, and then they're like, either that or they pulled him into that room again just to remind him, and they're like, yeah, these couple hundred files, they need to be. You need to delay this so we have more time to redact and edit them. Let's go ahead and show you that grassy knoll footage again. He's like, oh, okay.
They probably just said to him, do you want there to be the Trump files in 50 years?
Ooh, yeah.
And he went, no. And they went, right. Any other questions? It's sad, but that's probably what happened.
Yeah, and I think maybe that's what he meant when he said, "I had no choice." Really, you're the president, so why would you not have a choice?
Yeah.
Oh, because maybe there's people up higher than you calling the shots.
Or and they told him, well, national security reasons. But what national security reasons could honestly there be? 50? What is it? 50? It's 2017, so 54 years later. What could you possibly be protecting 54 years after his death?
Yeah, what tactics, what
most of those
what operational things, what technology, whatever. What is there from 1963 that still applies today in 2017 that is such a national security threat?
Unless there was something in there that showed, beyond a shadow of a doubt, even just one memo that implicated the president or Hoover or whoever. Somebody else posted something that Hoover had said, one of the documents they read, that Hoover had said it's imperative that the American people believe that there was only a single shooter. Well, that's not new. People are like, oh my God, the FBI, look at dude, holy cow. That's not new. That's new.
Actually, Ken Webb had brought up a very interesting aspect to this earlier today. And he said, yeah, there is a national security threat. He said the national security threat is the fact that if the American people found out that their government perpetrated the assassination of the president and lost their shit, yeah, that would be a national security threat to them.
Yeah, but
right?
The people, well, true, but I don't think that the people would lose their shit. That's the sad part. But yes, it would be. It could be.
Well, it would reinforce the fact that you can't believe anything that the government tells you, especially when you find out that they were involved in the assassination of the president.
Well, that would be. Well, that's why I've always said that's the other thing about it being a Keystone event. Is I've said to people that this is when it all started, and if I could get. This was the whole reason I started talking about it years ago. If I could get people to look at that event with a clean set of glasses, so to speak, clean away all the dirt and smudges off the lenses, move you 4 or 5 feet to the right or to the left, just change your perspective on it a little bit. Maybe move you forward, back, however. Change your perspective enough that you're looking at it from a different angle and through a clean pair of glasses, so to speak. And it's amazing what comes into view. I don't like the fact that the government was involved in the murder of a sitting president and then have lied about it for 54 years. And all of the crap that's been going on and that's going on today is a direct result of all of that. I don't like that. I don't like coming on air to have to talk about that stuff, but it's the truth, whether we like it or not. Sticking your head in the sand and going, la, 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 I'm going to believe whatever the government tells me, la, 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 is not going to stop anything from happening and not going to change anything. The first step to solving any problem is admitting that there is a problem to begin with. So there's a glaring problem. Yeah. Our president was killed and nobody did anything about it. Excuse me. Jack Ruby did something about it. He shot the supposed assassin who he knew.
Yeah, he shot the patsy.
Let me ask you a question. How does somebody get into the police station and shoot somebody? How do you do that? Well, it was different 54 years ago.
I don't know if this was new information that was gleaned from the releases today, or if this was already known. I mean, you've done more research than I have, but I saw a report today from, I think it was the one of the local Miami stations over there, and they said something about the FBI receiving information that somebody was going to kill Lee Harvey Oswald the day before Jack Ruby shot him, and somebody had called the FBI and said something that they were something about that they were part of a team or some sort of a group that were going to kill Lee Harvey Oswald, and it was given to the FBI, and the FBI contacted the police in Dallas, and the police assured them that all of the protective measures would be put in place to protect Oswald, which obviously no protective measures were taken.
Well, half the cops knew Ruby. They were dirty. They used to party in his clubs. Jack knew Oswald.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't know if you knew about the supposed.
No, I've never heard of. I heard something about it earlier today, but before that, I'd never heard of that. But it could be. It very well could be legit. I have to look into it, but. I mean,
well, it was supposedly gleaned out of the new releases, so I don't know.
And it could be legit. I don't know. I mean, maybe somebody was calling up to like thwart it. There was there was 3 places they were going to kill him. It was either going to be Miami, because he was coming down. He came down to Florida, Dallas, or Chicago. And Lee had actually foiled the plot in Chicago. He contacted the FBI. He had a handler in the FBI, and that when that didn't work, he contacted I think it was the Chicago field office. He made a phone call to them basically, and he spoke to them and tipped them off that there was going to be an assassination attempt on the president. So why would an assassin tip off the government that there was going to be an assassination attempt on the president and that he shouldn't go
No, it was somebody tipping off the FBI about Oswald being killed.
No, I know. What I'm saying is.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, why would anybody? This is a real case where Oswald stopped one of the assassination attempts in Chicago.
Yeah.
And like, why would he do that if he was the lone gun nut assassin? What? It doesn't make any sense. None of it does. None of it does. Why? How does? First of all, okay, I could go off for hours about the different things about the Kennedy assassination. What doesn't make sense, and what's.
And weren't a bunch of the Secret Service partying in Ruby's?
The night before.
Club, yeah.
Some of them were still hungover, and then they were also called off. They were also. I'm having Vince Palomara back on soon. I spoke to him earlier yesterday. I'm going to be having him back on. He's the Secret Service expert in the Kennedy assassination. He was in the History Channel series, The Men Who Killed Kennedy. And I'm having him back on to discuss the Secret Service. But I've done shows with him before. If you go to Federal Jack, or if you go to PopeyeRadio.com, you can scroll through, or I forget what it is. Usually Google or whatever has where you can search the page while you're whatever you're looking for. I don't know if they took that feature away, but if you know how to whatever search engine you're using, Firefox or Start Page or whatever.
You could search for terms.
Yeah, you can search for terms on the page. So just if you go to PopeyeRadio.com, there's like 600 plus shows there. Just type in like JFK, and it'll bring up all the JFK shows I've done. Type in JFK Secret Service, and it should, or just Secret Service, and it should bring up the shows I did with Vince about the Secret Service stand down. And I've played audio from Colonel Fletcher Prouty talking about how there was, why were there windows open in Dealey Plaza? The Secret Service would never allow that. And people go, well, this was 54 years ago, Popeye. They didn't have those standards. Yeah, they did. They most certainly did.
They totally did.
There were other presidents assassinated before Kennedy, just so we're clear.
Yes.
And there were other presidents where there were assassination attempts against them. So
that's why there was a bulletproof dome that should have been over JFK's car, but he chose not to have it that day.
Actually, That's a myth that he chose not to have it. Everybody says, Kennedy chose not to have it. If I remember correctly, it wasn't...
Or did they convince him not to have it?
Yeah, it wasn't like direct arrogance, like, oh, I'm going to have this, I don't need the dome or whatever. This is just remembering off the top of my head. And I don't remember who exactly made the decision to not have it, but it wasn't Kennedy being arrogant. And it was more so, I believe it was done for it was a couple factors that led into it. And one of them was he didn't want to look like, or not so much him, but like his people, they wanted him to be like more open with the people, right?
Yes, so he didn't seem like he was so like elitist or something like that.
Right. But like it wasn't Kennedy going, I don't need that stupid. Like they attack him and say that. And it was now I can't remember. I have to actually look it up now, but it wasn't him arrogantly not taking it, just taking it off and saying I don't need it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just know that that originally was
but that's the story.
A plan to have it on, and then somehow
either they left it out. I think they left. Either they didn't, they forgot it, or they left it. It was something that obviously was done on purpose, but so that they didn't have the protective dome.
Well, yeah, because he would have never been killed if it was
right. So
if it was implemented.
Whatever it was,
there was obviously some kind of
whatever it
decision made to.
He was convinced to not have it. And I think part of that was, they were trying to convince him to, like I said, be more open with the crowd or whatever. And if you think you have the Secret Service protecting you and you're not worried about them killing you or being involved in your murder, then, and normally, even if he didn't have the bubble, he would have had riders. He would have had guys that ride on the back steps of the limo. Well,
you mean the guys that jumped off?
Yeah, the guys that they were waved off. If you look right as the car makes a right turn on the left turn on the Elm, or it makes a right turn onto Houston and then a left turn on the Elm. As it's making that fateful turn, you'll see there's video, and you can see the Secret Service agents jump off the back and they throw their hands up in the air, or one of them does, and he's like, "What the hell?" He was just waved off. They usually ride the back of the limo. That way, if someone shoots at the president, they have to shoot through the Secret Service agent. So technically, if you believe the official version of events, Oswald, if he was the shooter, couldn't have shot Kennedy from behind if they were...
Yeah, because they would have been on the back, and as soon as a shot would have rang out, those guys on the back would have jumped on his back, basically.
Yes, they would have covered his body with theirs. That's what they're trained to do. So they knew that. So they had to wave those guys off. Ask yourself, why did the car stop for a second and slow down almost to a stop? I should say. It didn't completely stop, but almost to a stop.
It was like 11 miles an hour or something.
No.
Like that.
After he got shot, they slowed down even below that. It was about 10, 11 miles an hour he was going.
Why would you slam on the brakes when there's like bullets flying at you?
Right. That's the question. So was he in on it enough? Did he know that he had to give them a second enough? Because he hit the brake and the car slowed down enough, and that's when the final shot, the fifth and final shot, rang out and took Kennedy's head. Back and to the left. Back and to the left. Back and to the left. I mean, it's plain as day to see. And then again, Peter Jennings came out and said, the president's head seemed to thrust violently forward. No, it didn't.
Dude, that is the most ridiculous.
You can see the video. Just go on Google, go on YouTube, I'll just say go on the NSA's research archive of choice, and go on NSA Tube, or NSA Oogle, we'll call it.
Have you seen the new stabilized footage of the Zapruder film?
I've seen multiple different. I don't know. Is it Brandy New that just came out? I mean, I've seen stabilized footage.
I think it came out a couple years ago, but I mean, it's really, really, really good stabilized footage. I think that they took in Premiere or one of these really good video editors, and they stabilized it really, really good. And man, when you see that, you're just like, no way There's no way that
Dude,
that came from behind. I'll try to find it and send it to you.
I can't post it to YouTube because every time I do, it gets taken down with copyright
Yeah,
bullshit. But
yeah.
if people
No, I
go-
mean just for you to personally look at.
No,
I'll send it to you.
not that, but the video I'm about to talk about. If you, I'm trying to think where I could. All right, go to federaljack.com/JFK. Federaljack.com/JFK. And if you're going to search for terms on there, because there's a bunch of stuff there, search shooters. Just type in shooters and it should bring up video. It says it's like JFK shooters and shooters and shit. What was the other word? It's just type in shooters and you'll see it. And it says JFK shooters and something else. And when you watch it, I'm going to play the audio in a second here for everybody, but I can't play the video, and the video is just as good. And what I did was I cut these two pieces from Oliver Stone's JFK, the director's cut, and I just put them together. And I've used it to introduce my theory before. I did a great broadcast called JFK, A Case for Conspiracy. That's in the JFK downloadable archive as well, and it's also on Popeye Radio. But just go to federaljack.com/JFK and then search for JFK, A Case for Conspiracy. Download the video and watch it. It was an edition of Down the Rabbit Hole I did that after I did it, I made a video to go along with it, and because there was just a lot of stuff and I wanted people to actually see the video and not just hear the audio. And I used part of this clip in there to set up how he couldn't have done the shooting. And that's what this section is about. And I could easily just play that, and I might even rebroadcast that show, A Case for Conspiracy. But I can't, because every time I try to put it up on YouTube, the video catches me some flack. It doesn't matter what kind of magic editing I do. It does not matter. They nail that, dude. It doesn't matter. It's ridiculous. But that is one of my best videos about it, because I lay out the case clearly, multiple different reasons why it's bullshit. And the one biggest piece, the red flag, everybody always says to me, Popeye, if you could have one red flag as to why the Kennedy assassination, the narrative of it is false, what would that be? And I have to say, the gun and the shooter couldn't have done the shooting. There's your whole case. Nothing else matters. Everything else falls apart. If Oswald couldn't have done the shooting himself,
everything hinges on that. And if you can't prove that, then everything else falls apart.
Bingo. The whole linchpin of your case is that he shot him with that rifle, and it could not have happened. The rifle wasn't even zeroed in when the FBI went in to go test it, and then to go test fire it. Supposedly, the last thing it had done was kill the president. They find it in Oswald's quote-unquote sniper nest, and they take it for testing, right? And they had to re-zero the rifle before they could even shoot it. They had to re-zero it because the scope was just not working on it. It was a shitty, like, Klein sporting goods scope. Or it was garbage. It was a cheap,
how can you do that when the scope isn't even zeroed in and it's all screwed up?
Right. and you're going to use the world's worst shoulder weapon. The Mannlicher Carcano. The Italian army called the rifle the humanitarian rifle. I'm not kidding.
Yeah, because it couldn't hit crap, dude.
Yeah, you couldn't hit your enemy with it. They called it the humanitarian rifle. But I'm supposed to believe that this guy did the shooting. He was a medium shot at best. At best, a medium shot. I qualified expert. I can tell you I was a better shot than Oswald, and I couldn't have done the shooting from where they say it happened. Carlos Whitefeather Hathcock, one of the most famous military snipers in military history. Marine Corps sniper. 93 confirmed kills in Vietnam. Vietnamese called him Whitefeather. They feared him. Okay, this guy was an amazing shot. Amazing shot. Comes back from Vietnam, starts up the sniper school, United States Marine Corps Sniper School, Quantico, Virginia. Heads it up. While he's there, he decides he's going to build Dealey Plaza. He builds, measuring, with like dirt piles and stuff and, whatever, and wood and stuff. But they built it up the way that it would need to be built to run a test on it. Did stage themselves up where Oswald should have been. They had a moving target. I mean, they even set it up with like they had, had something that they pulled on a cable so that they could have it go past them. And he would, he was no fool. Like, he spent time setting up Dealey Plaza because he didn't think that Oswald could have done the shooting either. It's something about it didn't ring true with him, maybe because he was a shooter, right? So he sets it up. And you know what? White Feather couldn't do the shooting.
It's crazy. There's it's a small video game, and it has caught a lot of flack, just because of the fact that it's based off of, oh my God, you're reenacting the assassination of a president. But basically, it's a video game that recreates the Kennedy assassination, and supposedly you're supposed to take the shot from Oswald's sniper nest. And I don't think anybody has been able to pull it off, even in a video game. We're talking about like gamers that have like really pinpoint accuracy with their mouse and stuff like that. I think the only way they've been able to pull off the shot is like hacking the game with an aimbot or something. Usually everybody that plays the game, if they're going to take him out, they take him out when the car is heading towards the sniper nest before it turns.
On Houston.
Yes, exactly.
Which would have been
because there's
once
it turns
shot,
off of Houston, nobody can take the shot.
Right, because when the car was coming down Main Street, and the original parade route had it just stay, because if you look, it ended up going back on the Main Street, because you make the right on the Houston and the left on the Elm, and then Elm comes right back down into Main Street, just cuts down through Dealey Plaza. So the original parade route was the car stayed on Main Street. Would have been too far. If you look at an aerial shot of Dealey Plaza, which, again, going back to my the shows I did with Sherry Feister about the forensic analysis of the whole assassination, if you look at the aerial photographs, and I talk about this in the shows, if you look at where the original parade route was, it was too far from any sniper nest. It didn't matter if it was in the Grassy Knoll, Daltex building, the book depository. They could have been floating in a blimp over top, and it wouldn't have mattered. It was too far. Too much wind, too many variables, too many people in the way, moving vehicle. It would have been a damn near impossible shot. Now
they had to reroute it, man.
That's the only way. So then you have to ask yourself, well, if it was still a single sniper, why didn't he shoot him when he was coming up Houston? It's the easiest shot if you're a single sniper. You're right there in the sniper's nest. Even if you miss him with the first shot and they accelerate, you got him with the second. Because as he accelerates, your target picture is now becoming bigger. So instead of your target like running away from you and getting smaller, and now it's moving and the distance is getting further between the two of you. So now you have to account for that, and you have to kind of aim up. If the target's coming at you, you could pretty much directly aim right at the target, or just depending on the speed, if the target's moving pretty fast, just in front of it.
And I'm gonna put this in video game terms just for our like newer listeners and stuff, and people who've played shooters. It's a lot easier to shoot a target as it's getting closer and running at you than it is when they're far away. That's exactly the same scenario that occurred there.
Well, right.
And
so wait,
it's not deviating from left or right. It's moving directly towards you, so the target is actually getting bigger, and you don't have to really compensate for anything. Maybe at the most, just drop your sight down a little bit, but that's about it.
Right. So like when someone's charging down the hallway at you, meleeing at you because they're out of bullets, but you have a couple rounds left, or your knife, usually what do most guys do in the video games, in the first-person shooters? They don't aim right up at the head. They aim like kind of down at the knees and the feet. And if the person's running right at them, they'll either hit them in the knees or the feet, or they'll run into it and maybe hit them center mass or whatever, but they'll get a kill. Well, it's the same thing if you're actually shooting in real life at a moving target. If you're in that building, then yeah, that's why I didn't know that. But you're sitting here telling me about the game, and you go, yeah, most people shoot him when he's coming up the other, up Houston, and I'm like, yeah, because anybody that's ever looked at the sniper's nest and looked at where he supposedly shot as to the route that he took, you go, why didn't he just shoot him when he was coming up Houston?
And what's hilarious about the game, because the person who made the game, I'm gonna have to go look it up, and I'm actually gonna have to find the game. It's actually not available for download, like in regular means, because but
need to send this
the
to me,
only
by the
way
way.
the only way to pass the game is to actually take the official shot.
Oh, so
if you do it any other way, you fail. So basically, the game is impossible unless you hack it or something.
Yeah.
And the game was made basically to prove the fact that there was no way that Oswald could have took that shot. And that's why the game was put out. It was like, here you go. Take the shots in the order that the official story says, and if you can kill Kennedy, then you win the game. But if you kill him any other way, then you fail.
Right, because it goes to show you it's impossible. That's why you can't win the game.
Exactly.
Somebody asked in the chat, I have to address this. Somebody said, did Jackie O shoot Kennedy and then put the gun between the back seat? No. And Greer, the driver, didn't shoot him either. People have edited some footage and stuff, and people have said, look, you can clearly see that Jackie either shot him, or I know William Cooper had talked about that the driver turned around and shot him. Again, Cooper was also murdered back in 2001, and it's 2017, and I always say this.
Yeah, and for the person in chat, that footage was edited.
Yeah, but when I've seen him, I've seen Cooper change his opinion on things when shown new evidence. Unfortunately, he was murdered 16 years ago, so I can't, we can't go back in time and ask him what his opinion is about the situation. But I would, I would love to. I would, what I would really love is, I said this to Christina last night. I was looking at some of the files. I said I would love to have Colonel L. Fletcher Prouty here right now to go through some of this stuff, because I found one talking about, Ed Lansdale. It was a note about they were discussing Operation Mongoose, which is when they were running secret missions against Castro and training anti-Castro Cubans, and some of the stuff that they wanted to do, which also included, if you know anything about Operation Mongoose and Ed Lansdale, I should play that other clip I have about Lansdale too. Colonel Prouty talks about Ed Lansdale being in Dealey Plaza on November 22nd, 1963. Lansdale's forte was overthrowing overthrowing governments and committing coup d'états, so to speak. And he actually wasn't an Air Force colonel. That was his official title, and he had the title of Air Force colonel, and he wore it, but he wasn't an Air Force colonel. He was actually a CIA agent. And that was just his cover title, was Air Force colonel. And his whole thing was overthrowing governments and coup d'états and everything else. So what would he be doing in Dealey Plaza on November 22nd, 1963? Fletcher Prouty actually really does a good job of talking about it. And while I am chatting with you guys, I will bring that up too, because I already have one open for you guys, but I want to bring up that other one for you. It's incredible. There's lots of stuff. Like I said, there's lots of stuff in there that will probably, if anything, some people will be blown away by it, because they'll be like, oh my God, I can't believe that, this happened or whatever, or this is in here. But it's all in the books that have come out. Like if you go and you do any sort of research, it's in books that have come out throughout the years. I mean, again, Trine Day has tons of books about the JFK assassination. This is not something, if you want to understand what's going on, when people say to me, well, then who did it? I had somebody tweet me, who did it, bro? Well, I can't answer you in 140 characters. What I could tell you in a short period of time, if you want a quick answer to who did it, it's a combination of the Mafia, the CIA, the National Security State, a few other people, some hitmen, but they really worked. All that ends up being under the the auspices of the government and the mafia and everybody else. It was anti-Castro Cubans, the mafia, members of the military, FBI, the CIA.
It was everybody who had an interest in him being dead.
Well, yeah, which was everybody. And don't think, look, everybody thinks that it was his, where he was he started printing Kennedy greenbacks. A lot of people are like, you see, that's what, and there's this myth that that's what killed him. And it very well could have been a factor in it. But honestly, I think what killed him was that he did not want Vietnam. His stance against Vietnam, and he was going to pull the troops out. Vietnam never would have happened. Do you know how much money wouldn't have been made? Think about it. Everybody would have been affected by it. The politicians, the military-industrial complex, the banks that loan the money to everybody to buy, the weapons and everything else. Think about it. Just saying. That's why they killed him. I don't think I don't think it was just for because of the Kennedy Greenback thing and the Federal Reserve. That might have been a nail into the coffin, but I think the linchpin was that he was pulling the troops and everybody out of Vietnam. What else I find very interesting
is that after he was assassinated, we saw this massive divide and conquer division happen, right? I mean, look at how much turmoil there was in the 60s after Kennedy was assassinated. It's almost a repeat of what we're seeing today as far as race riots and all that, all that shit goes. It's just really, it's really reminiscent. It's almost a repeat of what we're seeing now.
Oh, I agree. It's very much so a repeat. And then you have people, but the problem is you don't have people like Jack Kennedy or Bobby or Martin Luther King Jr. out there walking around telling people, speaking deeply to people and quoting philosophers and quoting people like Solon, who was a Greek lawmaker.
Well, yeah, because we don't have any real leaders today. We don't have. It's so much easier to divide people. We don't have actual leaders, or anything like that. They usually get shut down before they even have a chance to rise up or anything like that.
I put together a video with Martin Luther King Jr. talking about the power of nonviolence, and I uploaded it to YouTube, and it immediately got banned in 5 countries. Malta, China, Italy, one other one, and I can't remember what it was. And then the other one was, the last one was, it said, the Holy See, and then in quotes, the Vatican. I took a screenshot. It's on my Facebook page. You go to Popeye DTRH on Facebook, and you'll see it. And they literally banned it in 5 countries, and because they said I had a copyright, and then they put like copyright restrictions on it. Which when they do that, it doesn't matter if you clear it up, which I did within a few days. What happens is you end up it takes that video off like the front shelf, and it like puts it basically on the back shelf. It doesn't show up in searches. So a beautiful video that I spent a lot of time putting together, talking about the power of nonviolence and how if you're going to do activism and stuff, why nonviolent methods are the best way to go, even if you're having violence committed against you, believe it or not. And this comes from someone who believes in self-defense, right? But Martin Luther King was very deep and profound on what he had to say. And I took 2 speeches plus an interview he had done on the subject, and I put it together, and it got blocked immediately. Instantly, boom, like that. I mean, they don't want... I could upload a video with kittens in it, and people won't, YouTube won't give a shit. You upload a video with Martin Luther King Jr. in it, and what got copyrighted and what got it blocked was his I Have a Dream speech, which I used... the part where he's talking about where he says, I have a dream, that whole climactic end of the speech. I used that in another part, and it was the I have a dream part. that they actually copyrighted and tried like taking the video down for, and I had to fight it. I was like, you can't copyright that, and you can't go and take someone's video down for that. That's complete fair use. That's a public speech given by a public figure in a public square. You can't copyright that. You can't copyright presidential speeches. We pay his salary, so technically, no, you can't copyright that. You can't prevent me from putting it up for others to see. But that's the kind of games that they play. They don't want information shared. So I should play that audio too. It's actually really good audio. But first,
they're also doing the same thing to Eisenhower's.
Yeah, I know. Every time I put that up, they block it too. I get copyright strikes on Eisenhower's farewell address. It's ridiculous. It's like, you can't. How do you do that? Oh well, there's this mysterious copyright entity. Back in the day, they used to not take them off. Now, if you fight it, they'll at least take them off. Whenever I play the Kennedy Secret Society speech, I get whatever it gets played in, gone.
For the people in the chat, I'm going to post the link to that extremely stabilized Zapruder film footage. And it's some really, really, really compelling footage. Crazy.
People need to watch the Zapruder film at least once, just to see that, why I say the whole term.
It told me, oops. Remove any web addresses and try again when I'm linking it directly to another YouTube video.
Of course. Of course, because they don't want anybody to see certain things. It's all about the controlled message, Scott. Remember that. First,
I'll see if I can get it through there.
All right. Well, first, I'm gonna the piece of audio I'm gonna play right now is, I have two pieces. One's about 9.5 minutes. That's the second one I'll play. But the first one right now it's about 7 minutes, and it's the audio from the video. Again, if you go to, it's called JFK Crossfire and Shooters. That's what it's called. So if you go to federaljack.com/JFK, and I'll even drop the link in the chat. I'll find it while it's playing. It's called JFK Crossfire and Shooters. I'll put the link in the YouTube chat for anybody that wants to download the video and watch it themselves. It's just two pieces that I cut out from Oliver Stone's movie JFK, the director's cut. And it's one scene is Kevin Costner's character and another actor who plays a real individual who is a researcher, an investigator for Jim Garrison, who Costner's playing, who was the district attorney of New Orleans, who actually was the only person to ever bring any type of charges in the Kennedy assassination against anyone. And I actually have Garrison's response to in black and white. I'm going to be putting that up. I have some of this stuff I have all together in that JFK, A Case for Conspiracy, which I'll drop a link in the YouTube chat for that too as well while the audio's playing. But it's maybe I should, hold on, let me see. Do I have a link for the other one too? Yeah, I do. Okay. So it's an audio clip. The first one I'm going to play is Jim Garrison and Lou Ivan in the film discussing they're in the midst of the investigation, and they're in the sniper's nest, and they're discussing what Scott and I were just talking about. That's why it's funny, because I know you saw the video, but you didn't know that I was going to play that while we were chatting just now. And you brought up why, it's funny, everybody in the video game shoots him on Houston. Yeah, because if you looked out the window and anything about
that's
shooting,
the most logical place that you would want to, if you were going to take him out, that's the most logical place to do it. And that's the easiest place to do it. There's no other way. I mean, it's retarded to take a shot once they've turned off of Houston. There's no way, unless you were going to funnel them into a kill zone or kill box.
Exactly. So I'm going to play these two pieces, and then I'll stop racking everybody's brain for the evening, because I do have to get off eventually tonight. I can't do 4 hours again tonight. But I did promise to go spend some time with the ever lovable rad chick, and we're gonna go have a Netflix binge tonight. After
go watch that new that new Stranger Things. They
yeah.
dropped it.
Yeah, I should go watch. Well, I have to watch it anyway, just so I can analyze it and be like, okay,
It's good stuff, man.
what's in our face? But yeah, I haven't seen the new one yet. Don't tell me anything. I'll be binge watching.
No, I'm not gonna. I haven't been told anything either, because when I woke up, my brother already binge watched 9 episodes of it, and I was like, "Do not tell me anything. Tomorrow, I'm gonna watch it."
Yeah, Christina's been watching the first season, getting prepped while I've.
It's good stuff.
I've been.
I love it. It's one of my favorite shows.
She's been patiently waiting for me, so I'm going to play these clips and then we'll wrap it up. But I just wanted to get online tonight and just chat for a few with everybody and just put my thoughts out there about some of these files and stuff. I'm going to be having a bunch of guests on, and I'm going to be re-airing some interviews I've done that maybe newer listeners don't know about. You should just, if you're a YouTube listener, you should go through my archives. You'd be surprised what's in there. I've interviewed St. John Hunt a couple times, E. Howard Hunt's son, the guy, who took the whole deathbed confession of his father about being involved in the Kennedy assassination. Anyway, I'm going to
PopeyeRadio.com.
Yes.
I'm going to plug it for you.
Popeye Radio.
PopeyeRadio.com, people. FederalCheck.com. That is literally a rabbit hole that good stuff there.
Yeah, once you start, you can't stop. It's like Pringles. Anyway, first thing I'm going to play is the video I titled JFK Crossfire and Shooters, and I will drop these links while it's playing. And then the second one I'll introduce after it's over is about Ed Lansdale. So first I'm going to bring up this one. So here we go. JFK Crossfire and Shooters.
Zapruder film establishes 3 shots in 5.6 seconds. Here. I'm Oswald. Time me.
Go.
Time?
Between 6-7 seconds.
And that's without really aiming. Key is the second and third shots came almost right on top of each other. It takes a minimum 2.3 seconds to recycle this thing. The other problem is there was a tree there, blocking the first 2 shots at the time they occurred in the Zapruder film.
Didn't J. Edgar Hoover say something about that? Leaves are falling off in November?
It was a Texas live oak, Chief. It sheds its leaves the first week of March. So you take this Carcano, world's worst shoulder weapon, and you try to hit a moving target at 88 yards through heavy foliage? No way. Here. FBI tried 2 sets of tests. Not one of their sharpshooters could match Oswald's performance. Not one. And Oswald was at best a medium shot. The scope was defective on it too. I mean, this is the whole essence of the case to me. The guy couldn't do the shooting. Nobody could. And they sold this lemon to the American public.
The Zapruder film is the proof they didn't count on, Lou. We gotta get our hands on it.
That means we have to subpoena Time Live.
Let me ask you something, Lou. Why not just shoot Kennedy coming up Houston? There's plenty of time. He's out in the open.
I know, I keep asking myself the same thing.
It's a frontal shot.
Even if you miss him for the first shot, if he accelerates, you still got him for the second shot. No, the only reason for waiting to get him on Elm is you got him in a triangulated crossfire. Right? You put a team there, down at the fence, for a frontal shot, flat, low trajectory. Put a third team down here in this building here on a low floor. Kennedy gets the kill zone there. It's a turkey shoot.
How many men?
Okay. Got 1 shooter, say 1 spotter on a radio, maybe 3 teams. I'd say these professional riflemen too, Chief. They're serious people. Hunters. Patient. Takes skill to kill with the rifle, Chief. You gotta figure that's why there's been no execution of a chief executive with one in 200 years. 3, 2, 1. Main Street's over there, right? Original parade route on the way to the trademark?
Mm-hmm.
It's too far, right?
Too far.
Impossible shot. So they changed the parade route. Bring him down here, moving at a normal 25 miles per hour. They knew the motorcade would have to slow down to about 10 miles per hour to make that turn there, and that's where he got him.
So what really happened that day? Let's just for a moment speculate, shall we? We have the epileptic seizure around 12:15 p.m., distracting the police, making it easier for the shooters to move into their places. The epileptic later vanished, never checking into the hospital. The A-team gets on the 6th floor of the depository. Now, they were refurbishing the floors in the depository that week, which allowed unknown workmen in and out of the building. They moved quickly into position, just minutes before the shooting. The second spotter on the radio talking to the other two teams has the best overall view, the God spot. B team, one rifleman and one spotter with the headset and access to the building moves into the low floor of the Daltex building. The third team, the C team, moves in behind the picket fence above the grassy knoll where the shooter and the spotter are first seen by the late Lee Bowers in the watchtower of the rail yard. They have the best position of all. Kennedy is close and on a flat, low trajectory. Part of this team is a coordinator who's flashed security credentials at several people chasing them out of the parking lot area. Probably 2 to 3 more men are down in the crowd on L. 10 to 12 men, 3 teams, 3 shooters. The triangulation of fire Clay Shaw and David Ferry discussed 2 months before. They've walked the plaza. They know every inch. They've calibrated their sights. They've practiced on moving targets. They're ready. Kennedy's motorcade makes a turn from Maine onto Houston. It's gonna be a turkey shoot. They don't shoot him coming up Houston, which is the easiest shot for a single shooter in the book depository. They wait. They wait till he gets to the killing zone between 3 rifles. Kennedy makes a final turn from Houston onto Elm, slowing down to some 11 miles an hour. The shooters across Dealey Plaza tighten, taking their aim, waiting for the radio to say, green, green, or abort, abort. The first shot rings out, sounding like a backfire. It misses the car completely. Frame 161, Kennedy stops waving as he hears something. Conley's head turns slightly to the right. Frame 193, the second shot hits Kennedy in the throat from the front. Frame 225, the president emerging from behind the road sign. You can see that he's obviously been hit, raising his arms to his throat. The third shot, frame 232, hits Kennedy in the back, pulling him downward and forward. Conley, you will notice, shows no signs at all of being hit. He is visibly holding his Stetson, which is impossible if his wrist has been shattered. Conley is turning here now, frame 238. The fourth shot, it misses Kennedy and takes Conley in the back. This is the shot that proves there were 2 rifles. Conley yells out, "My God, they're going to kill us all." Somewhere around this time now, another shot that misses the car completely strikes James Craig down by the underpass. The car brakes. The 6th and fatal shot, frame 313, takes Kennedy in the head from the front. This is the key shot. The president going back and to his left. Shot from the front and right. Totally inconsistent with the shot from the depository. Again, back and to the left. Back and to the left. Back and to the left. Back and to the left.
Now that's the one clip. The second clip I'm going to play is from Colonel L. Fletcher Prouty. And I've played this before. This is him discussing why he thought it was weird. Somebody sent him photographs. He was going through photographs of the assassination. And there was a lot of stuff that didn't sit true with him from day one. He was still in at the time, and it was a little weird. He even explains that he was sent away by Lansdale, who was his boss at the time. It would have been Lansdale, and there was another guy named Victor Krulak, who was I believe Krulak was a Marine Corps general, but he worked Prouty worked for the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He was the first chief of special operations under Kennedy. He wrote special warfare tactics books for Fort Bragg. They're still using, the Green Berets still use some of the books that he wrote on special forces type warfare, because they were just starting to get into all of that in that time period, in that time frame. They had commandos and stuff in World War II, but special ops and all that stuff was just starting to get what it is. It was just starting to become what it is and come into its own. Kennedy was responsible for helping foment a lot of that. The special forces community actually has a lot of respect for him. Anyway, I don't want to digress too much because we can get into final thoughts afterwards, but I want to get into the next clip, which is Colonel L. Fletcher Prouty on Ed Lansdale being in Dealey Plaza on November 22nd, 1963.
Colonel Fletcher Prouty discusses Dealey Plaza, November 22nd, 1963. Colonel Prouty worked in the U.S. military for 23 years, 9 years in the Pentagon from 1955 to 1963. He worked closely with many influential people, including Director of Central Intelligence Allen Dulles, General Victor Krulak, and General Edward Lansdale. Colonel Prouty's work centered on special operations, the support of clandestine activities. While in the office of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, he worked with the Office of Cover and Deception. He established and was the first head of the focal point office between the Air Force and the CIA, the chief of Team B. Here are observations he made in 1989 regarding photographs taken in Dealey Plaza.
The photographic evidence as a total at that time is absolutely amazing. What various researchers have done is take all these photographs and place them in a time frame so that you can see where people standing in one place and there's the same person over here and other ones, and begin to identify some of these people. So we've worked very hard on looking carefully at who is in these pictures. There are several of them that are really outstanding, and one of the most amazing is this group of these three men who the news story said had been removed from a boxcar in a rail yard right in back of Dealey Plaza, and were being led from that boxcar by police to the sheriff's office, and that's the end of it. The trail ends. They weren't booked. There's no record of them at all. Well, let's look at the pictures. The pictures do show three men that somebody have called tramps. Well, they got new shoes on. They are not tramps. The police that are leading them, one in front and one in back. One of them has very clearly a hearing device in his ear. And furthermore, the Dallas police don't lead prisoners into the sheriff's office. The police and the sheriff's office work together, but their jobs are entirely different. And in a sense, taking prisoners to the sheriff's office is the last place the police would take any prisoners. So all that part of it is very questionable. So when researchers had arrived at that point, one of them came to me one day and said, look, of all the pictures we've studied, this little episode of these men being marched right across in front of the school book depository building where Oswald was supposed to have been, and across the street by Dealey Plaza where the president's car had just gone, into the sheriff's office. There's something wrong about these pictures. So we looked at them very carefully. And in the very first picture, in addition to the two policemen and the three tramps, as they're called, is another man. And he's walking in the other direction. But the thing about it is, so that his back is more or less to, or his side and his back is more or less to the photographer rather than face forward. There's something about it is, how is it possible that anyone at Dealey Plaza that day, and here these men are probably being marched across there 5 minutes after the president was killed. Everybody was running around, people were excited, sirens were blowing, and here's this man in a business suit, just as casually walking along. He doesn't even turn, he's not looking at anybody, just walking past, and he happens to be standing by these men as they're being marched. The least he would be doing is looking at these prisoners or looking at the policemen. You know, anybody would, especially at that time. This man's looking at nobody. And I recognized immediately that that man is General Lansdale. Now, Lansdale is a very interesting figure in the Kennedy era. And I know Lansdale. I worked with him off and on from about 1952 to 1963. So he retired. Now, this is interesting. He retired from the Air Force on October 31st, 1963. Well, of course, the picture could have been 100 other people, and I could be wrong, but I know him very well. Then I looked at the tramps themselves, and there's this strange little eye catch between this man and the first tramp coming by. In other words, the first tramp, instead of being seriously concerned about the fact that he may be charged with the murder of the president, is smiling. And the second tramp has a sort of a quizzical little look, and you can tell that he has looked at this man walking by, and he has the same kind of approach, you know, as though he's just been reassured everything's all right. The third man happens to be in back from the camera's point of view, and you don't see him at all. But that little bit of expression is saying an awful lot at that moment. The police themselves have expressions that indicate more, that as if they were saying to somebody, say, boss, am I doing all right? You know, that kind of thing. In other words, was Lansdale walking down right in front of the school book depository building to sort of reassure some people here, maybe his employees or somebody that's working for him? What's the significance of that? Well, of course, that happened to be my own interpretation. The men who had brought the pictures to me hadn't the slightest idea who it was, and I decided at that moment that what was needed next was a lot of research. So I got some very clear copies of those professional pictures. These pictures were taken by a professional news cameraman. I got a clear picture. And I started mailing the picture to acquaintances of mine and acquaintances of Lansdale who knew him without any of my thoughts. I simply would send the picture and say, can you tell me what this looks like to you? This was taken shortly after the death of the president, and I wonder if this picture calls anything to mind to you. You'd be amazed to find that from senior people in the government, such as Lansdale was or such as I was at the time, I got immediate confirmation. That said Lansdale. Well, now, I don't know why he was in Dallas. I can't go into that. But it's astounding that this man, who was Assistant Secretary of Defense for Special Operations after General Graves Erskine retired, who was the man who had more or less almost single-handedly set up Diem as president of South Vietnam, who again almost single-handedly had set up President Magsaysay as the president of the Philippines, who was considered probably the most significant person in the U.S. military, U.S. government on the subject of counterinsurgency, civic action, special forces, Green Beret troops. He had written the books that the Green Berets used in their courses down at Fort Bragg. What could have been his role at that time? I had a very personal interest in that because only a month or two before that, Lansdale had met me in the halls of the Pentagon and said that he had arranged for me to go as a military escort officer with a VIP party to the South Pole. And it happened that I left for the South Pole on about November 10th or something like that, and that I was in New Zealand on the way back from the South Pole when I heard about President Kennedy being killed. Why Lansdale asked me to go to the South Pole, I have no idea. Or was there some connection between this role that he may have been playing in Dallas and the fact that he would just as soon I be out of town? And I reflected on that, especially when I began to realize that almost all of Kennedy's cabinet was out of town, that some 45 officials with the cabinet were also out of town in Honolulu and on their way to Tokyo. They were actually on their way to Tokyo when the president was killed. And over the years I have made a study of how many people central to the inner workings of the secret government of this country had been moved out of Washington at that time. It's a very, very interesting subject. I wish I could answer it. I don't know how to answer it. I'm sure the picture is Lansdale. Others are sure it's Lansdale, and I have to leave it there.
Colonel Fletcher Prouty and General Victor Krulak both worked with General Edward Lansdale in the Pentagon. Both men identify him being in Dealey Plaza November 22, 1963. General Lansdale specialized in political psychological warfare operations and manipulation of governments. He worked for Allen Dulles, the Director of Central Intelligence. Although his cover story title was Air Force Colonel and later General, he was always working for the CIA. The photo of him reveals deep involvement with certain members of the CIA in the planning, removal, cover story, and cover-up of the assassination of President Kennedy in Dallas on November 22, 1963. Planning and cover story for such manipulation of government personnel was Lansdale's forte. Documents shown here are available at www.prouty.org.
Prouty.org, Prouty.org. Prouty.org. Go over there, and I would get all of the information you can. Leno Senek set that site up, and if you have to, I think you can buy everything that he's got on, like Fletcher's archives, and it's not super expensive on DVD. There's multiple DVDs. There's so much information. Colonel L. Fletcher Prouty, ladies and gentlemen, The Secret Team, and he also had a book titled JFK, and then there's a really long subtitle to it. But just type up, if you go on your favorite search engine of choice, go look up Fletcher Prouty, and then look up The Secret Team, or just type in Fletcher Prouty's books, and you'll find it there. So, Scott, what do you think? I saw you tweeted during the one video. I saw you tweeted back and to the left.
Well, I mean, that's all it really boils down to, right? Back and to the left. I mean,
it's hard for me to, like, at 2 o'clock in the morning to whip out, like, a live show, like, and be like, I want to, there's so much stuff I could play on air right now for everybody, but the best thing I could tell you to do, because no one's going to stay up repeatedly for like 6 or 8 hours, so it's hard to bust out a live show talking about this topic. Mm-hmm. But I just urge everybody to go to federaljack.com, go to federaljack.com/JFK, and it's a downloadable archive page of just a ton of stuff, and these videos that I've played are in there, and you can see the video that goes along with it. The special broadcasts I've done. Like I said, JFK, A Case for Conspiracy. That's one of the ones I really think you should go listen to or watch the video. I dropped the links in the YouTube chat. You can go click on all of them from there. Some of them are the download links. One of them is a link to the JFK download page, and the other one is a link to JFK, A Case for Conspiracy. If you listen and we'll just watch the video, because the video that I put together to go with the broadcast I did is everything goes hand in hand, and you will not hear a lot of this stuff even on YouTube anymore. A lot of it, channels that were associated with it have been taken away, and you're not going to hear the mainstream talk about any of this stuff. And it's one of
so supposedly there's a document from the new release that was just posted on Zero Hedge, and actually, Zero Hedge is a pretty good website. I frequent them constantly.
That's the document that I was referring to earlier, where I said it corroborated that the shot came through the front windshield.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's the one.
Yeah,
but
really interesting.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because if you read the thing, this is what I mean about people just posting. Not you, and it's not Zero Hedge. It's more so the person I had originally saw post an article about it. But this is a document. If you read it, it's talking about special agents, a bunch of them, and they were following and obviously keeping an eye on somebody. And I have to look up who this guy is. Orrin Fenton Podio. and it's Orrin Fenton Podio, and I have to see who he was and who he was. I guess he was giving a speech. He's probably whatever. He's talking about Kennedy and Oswald and all that stuff.
Yeah. So supposedly this was all according to Potio,
yes,
or Potito, or whatever.
Okay, and Podio, and that's why
so we gotta go look back and see who this guy is.
But this goes to show you that what you can take out of this is that if you look at it, it was at the speech, and the speech was given January 16th, 1964. And you'll see, he says the Surgeon General's report on the assassination stated the first bullet entered the president's throat below the Adam's apple, clearly showing that two persons were involved, with the first shot being fired from the bridge across the parkway in front of the car. To further substantiate this, Podio said there was a bullet hole in the windshield of the president's car, which that's been talked about. And if you go...
It makes a lot of sense, actually.
I have to find the links. I posted these on YouTube a while ago because they had been removed from the History Channel. But there used to be a series called The Men Who Killed Kennedy, and every year around the assassination, they would play it. Hold on, my throat is all jacked up.
Yeah, so's mine.
I don't know what the hell's wrong with my throat. Anyway...
I've been doing 3 hours of radio before I came on here, so that's probably why.
That's probably why, too. So, I just took a swig of my coffee. How unprofessional. Anyway, so, now I forgot what I was telling you because of this. So, the Men Who Killed Kennedy series. So, it was a 9-part series, and they used to advertise it as a 6-part series, and it was like my favorite thing. I would watch it every year, and makes you wonder, makes you think. And this was before internet was like super cool and you could get anything on it. And then as the internet was coming into its own in that aspect, back in like 2000, well, even before it, back in like 2000 and what, it was 2001, 2001 or 2002. I want to say 2001. George Bush and his family and Cheney, at the behest of Lady Bird Johnson, because Lyndon was dead and she was still alive at the time, and she contacted them, and then they all put pressure on the History Channel, and they removed the series. It wasn't a 6-part series, though. It was a 9-part series, and they only aired, the other 3 parts aired back in like 2001, and right after they aired, they only aired like once or twice, and then the History Channel had it ripped down, and it was never in rotation. And before that, the Men Who Killed Kennedy series was one of those things that it would come up in November, and you're like,
I think that was right after 9/11.
Yeah,
coincidentally,
it wasn't too long after 9/11, and they, like you could set your clock by it, like that you knew the beginning of November all month long they'd be playing the Men Who Killed Kennedy. It was like just like they do with all their other shows on the History Channel. And it was always like one of those things. So long story short, they removed it. Now, I've had them up on YouTube before, but they actually got me copyright strikes. The History Channel took out one of my channels because of that series years after I had uploaded it. But they're still up on YouTube. You can find them, and I've re-uploaded them to a couple other channels. Or if you go to the federaljack.com/JFK section. So federaljack.com/JFK, federaljack.com/JFK, federaljack.com/JFK. They're there. And parts 7, 8, and 9 are there. And 7 was Vince Palomera and Jim Fetzer and a couple other people talking about the Secret Service stand down and how the bullet hole went through the windshield, and that they replaced the windshield on the limousine right afterwards. They literally took here's a crime scene, and it's being cleaned and taken apart and reupholstered, new windshield put in to cover everything up right after the assassination. Part 8 was Judith Ferry Baker and Lee Oswald, and part 9 was LBJ, and based off of Bar McClellan's book Blood, Money, and Power, which is a great book. I urge you to go read it or find an audio copy of it or something. I use Audible. I don't get paid to advertise for them, but I do use Audible. Great audiobook service. Love it.
we were just talking about Audible on Freaky Friday earlier. It's so good. And the reason is because the reason why I like to tout Audible is because I'm disabled and I have like a lot of severe mobility issues, and it's very hard for me to turn pages in a book and all of that stuff. So I love audiobooks. It's great. It's one of the best things, at least for me. So yeah, I mean, audiobooks are awesome.
Yeah, audiobooks rock. Somebody just said to me in the chat, something is wrong with the file. Agents fingerprinted Oswald corpse. What's wrong with it? Let me know what's up with it in the chat, and I'll try to take a look at it and see if I have to re-upload it. A lot of this stuff I ripped. This stuff used to be all over YouTube back in the day, a lot of this stuff, and then they started purging Kennedy assassination stuff left and right. But yeah, anyway, Audible's great. I go through books. I go through like 2 or 3 books a week on there. I just got a book on there. You got to get it. It's called The Devil's Chessboard by Peter Talbot. It's all about... I want to get the physical version of the book too, but it's all about Allen Dulles. I saw this guy's article I have to rip apart. He wrote an article basically about the JFK files and what to expect, and he was like attacking conspiracy theorists and all this stuff. And he's talking about he goes, here's a name to remember, James Jesus Angleton, he was the director of counterintelligence at the CIA, and he was legendary, okay? And people can say he was paranoid or whatever. Like this guy he was nothing more than an alcoholic, paranoid, idiot, blah, blah, blah. He like totally attacked him. But the people that worked with Angleton and people in the CIA view Angleton, they don't view him as an idiot. He was the director of counterintelligence. The guy was extremely, extremely smart. Okay, so I'm not saying he was a great guy, but you can't go and say, oh, he was just a drunk asshole. I mean, that's...
Yeah, I mean, how does a random drunk asshole become
the director of counterintelligence? Thank you.
Yeah, the director of counterintelligence.
Thank you. Okay, I mean, he might have very well been a drunk and an asshole and other things.
Yeah.
But that's not. He was still able to do his job, and he was like, they assassinate the character so that way people go, I'm not really worried about this guy or whatever. But he mentions him by name, and that's because Angleton was heavily involved in the assassination and the cover-up thereafter, and people going, disappearing and things like that, and murder and covering up murders and things. He worked at the behest of Allen Dulles. No one talks about that. You don't hear Allen Dulles' name getting mentioned. Because he's higher up the food chain, and he's one of those sacred cows that you don't touch.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's also the same guy that headed the Warren Commission. So he was in charge of the commission investigating the murder of the president who had just fired him from his job. What? There's no conflict of interest there? Oh, something about the file format not supported. It might be, it depends on what you're downloading. So people know some of the older file formats back in the day, because I've been doing this for over 10 years, they didn't always have MP4 or Windows media files. A lot of times when you could rip stuff from the internet, it would only download it in an FLV file, which is a flash video file. Now that you can do like HTML5, you can play it, you can upload it as an MP4, and if you downloaded it, it would download the file as an MP4.
Get VLC Media Player. It should play pretty much everything if you're having problems with that.
Yeah, or I know Real Player plays FLV files, and I paid for it. It was like $30, but then I got like a lifetime update subscription for it. It's called HD Video Converter Factory Pro, and it's worth like the $30 you'll pay for it, because you can convert any file into any other type of file.
Yeah, a lot of those files are like really, really old and in like weird formats that
some of this stuff I ripped
just aren't supported anymore.
I found these files back.
But that's
in the
just
day.
how we roll, man. It's crazy.
There's a lot of channels, dude, that my archives are super full because I ripped stuff from YouTube before channels disappeared, and a lot of these people don't YouTube anymore. They're like, screw this. I'm tired of getting screwed over. I'm over this shit. And I can't say as I blame them. So they're just over it. They're like, I'm not doing this anymore. And, I saw the writing on the wall years ago, and I started just downloading. I would find documentaries, and after watching the documentary, the first thing I would say is, my God, how is this still on the internet? Download. And I started, it used to be on Google Video. I remember doing Google Video way before YouTube even got out there. Half the documentaries, here's a little thing nobody really even knows, but like half the documentaries that are floating around, when I see them out there, I kind of chuckle because I'm responsible for putting up a large amount of them on the YouTube. But even before that, on Google Video, and I know because I'm the one that digitized it. I have software, and I still have the same software, that I found a lot of these older docs on DVD, digitized them, and put them up on the net. And it was cool over the years to see how many thousands of different channels have these copies of these documentaries and I can tell when they're the ones I've done. So I'm like, yep, that's mine. Some of them, I even, as a test, I threw like a Federal Jack watermark or a logo in the bottom corner, and it's still there. So
it's insane. It's insane how like people like us can remember a time when YouTube didn't even exist, and it all boiled down to, like sites that actually like hosted the files themselves, and it was all like viral like that. It's weird, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, dude, I remember when we had to be like, it was like guerrilla warfare, basically. You're running around and you had to like download files.
It was. It was all about getting your own site name out there and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. When we used to do street actions, we used to get, when Alex Jones used to tell the truth, we used to get his documentaries back in the day, and we'd burn them, and then we'd go through like, and other, not just his, other truth documentaries as well. I have like 300 different movies, and we would burn them, and then we'd go to like Best Buy and Sears and all these other places that had the big video sections, and we'd find the DVD players that ran all the TVs, like that they were all connected to, and we'd throw the disc in, press play, and walk off. And you'd have like Police State 4, Zeitgeist, whatever, just playing. And we'd turn the volume up so that people walk, and then you walk around and you look like you're buying a TV, and you play with the TV and figure if you can get like closed captions on or whatever. Yeah, dude, it was fun. Those were the days. That was probably like 10 years ago, though. We used to take so many different... I used to burn thousands and thousands of DVDs and just go pass them out. I used to carry them in my pocket, and we'd go to... If I went to the restaurant, I'd talk to the waitress, get into a conversation. I'd be like, hey, do you like movies? Yeah, I love movies. Cool. And I would just say, my friend... I wouldn't even get into it. I'd just be like, my friends and I are documentary filmmakers, and they've put some films together and stuff, and I'm helping them advertise them, but because they're new, instead of charging people for them, we're burning copies and giving them away, but they're legit copies, but we're burning them for free and giving them away because, hey, knowledge is power, and we want to get the work out there. And people would be like, free movies, yeah. And I would literally be just handing out DVDs wherever I went. Now it's digital. It's way easier. I could be like, go to federaljack.com /JFK and just download everything. You know how hard it was? One of the DVDs I used to give out was the last 3 episodes of the Men Who Killed Kennedy series. I used to burn 7, 8, and 9. And I would give them out, and I would explain to people that it was... and I would say, hey, you ever see that Men Who Killed Kennedy series? Yeah, on the History Channel. There's another 3 parts to that, right? No. I'm like, yeah, they banned it here. You should watch it. Why would they ban it? And then they look at you, and I'm like, because of the knowledge. And they go, I'm going to have to go home and watch this. It's like, yes. Yes. Anyway, yeah, so I just wanted to go over some of the stuff. I'm not really in depth because I haven't ripped through them, and I don't think everybody's really ripped through it. But that's a case in point. When you read that, all right, if at first glance you're going to look at that article.
Well, I mean, all basically this shows is that, the information that's already out there gives you enough evidence to question the official narrative. So, I mean,
all right, all the stuff, and I said this to Tina, pretty much what I think is in those files will come out, will be stuff that you might find in a memo or something that verifies stuff that we've already talked about. The best, you're not going to get any smoking guns out of that evidence. What I would suggest is instead, I mean, go through them. But I would suggest you do the research and go read all the books first and start listening to, listen to the shows I've done. Go through the the federaljack.com/JFK section, then go listen to other radio show hosts that like Leno Senek or Doug Campbell. I had Doug on my show. I think he's on Stitcher. He does his show. He does a great show. There's tons of authors who have written books. You got to read. That's why I mentioned Audible. That's why Scott brought up Audible. You got to do the research. You're not going to get a 2-hour podcast and be able to really know and have a nuanced understanding as to what's going on. Like, Christina was reading this article to me, and as she was reading the article and showing it to me, and then I went through it and I was looking at it and I kind of thumbed through it, right? But as she's reading the article to me, she starts, there's names, and she's like, you might know some of these names, and as she's mentioning the names, I'm like, yes, 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 and off the top of my head, I'm able to rattle off all these facts about this person. It's because I've spent years since I was in my teenage years, and I'm going to be 41 this year, okay? And since I was a teenager, I've been studying this. So you have to take time and read to absorb it. And then when you look at the Kennedy files, you're going to start to look through that stuff, and it'll make some sense as to like what's what. I don't want people diving in to those files head first like they did the WikiLeaks stuff and instantly say, well, oh my God, there's code in here, or look, they're talking about this or that. You have to have an understanding of the whole time period and of not only the assassination, but the whole Watergate time period from the time Jack became president up to about Watergate, and even into like the 80s is it's good to have a reference of all this stuff, but that time period, right, between the 60s and the 80s, there's that 20-year swath where it's really good to understand what was going on at that time period during the Cold War and the mindset of everybody, the people that were involved. If you understand all the players, it would be like if you tried to read George R.R. Martin's Game of Thrones series, like if you were reading that, if you're into that, or if you watch Game of Thrones on HBO, if you watch that show, okay, if you tried to fast forward to the end of like season 3 or 4, and I forget which season it is, Joffrey, he's like the teenage douchebag king, and he eventually gets killed, right? And long story short, you could fast forward to season 3 or 4 and see him get killed, but you'll never understand the nuance as to why all the other characters in that space either wanted him dead or were upset about it or were happy about it. You have to understand how everything fits together, the whole puzzle. You have to research each piece, so to speak. So, it's like all of these Generation Z people trying to deconstruct JFK when they were born after 9/11, and they don't even understand that. Yes. Well, that's the biggest problem with the second wave of the alternative media truth movement, whatever you want to call it here, where people will put up a video, and I'm not attacking anybody, but this is a problem that needs to be addressed.
I must say though, Generation Z is a lot more awake than the millennials. So,
well, no, yes,
there's that.
I mean anyone. It's not really a generation. It's just people that are researching this, that are new to this. They understand a 2% level, and then they dive in and start doing YouTube videos, and the only thing they're basing all these theories that they have, and then they're like analyzing world events only based off of this 2% of the knowledge, when there's so much more that you have to take in so you have a fuller understanding. And I'm not being facetious when I say that. I'm not picking on anybody. It took me years before I even bothered to talk about anything live or do videos where I was even make videos, let alone doing videos where I was using my voice or discussing anything about any of this, until I had a level of knowledge that I felt comfortable with on everything, so I could answer a question and not be caught off guard or look like a fool, because you're going to get schooled. You're going to go up against somebody that you're going to get into a debate, and even if that person is wrong that you're debating, they have a better level of understanding of the topic that you're talking about. So even if they're putting out lies and disinformation, it doesn't matter. You can't counter any of that, because you're only going to know a certain amount. And then if they say something to you, you're going to be like, no, you're lying, you're a shill, whatever. And then they're going to be able to prove what they said was accurate. even if the context is different, or they use it to make a logical fallacy, it doesn't matter. You're not winning. You're not trying to win their mind in a debate. You're trying to win the minds of the people that are listening to the debate. And that's how people get destroyed, and then they result to, yelling at each other and screaming, and there goes a debate, and then there's no more information or any intellectual value to what you're talking about anymore. So to avoid all that, you just have to have a level of knowledge on the subject, because then when someone comes at, that's deeper than 2%, because then when someone comes at you with that, you can easily destroy what they're doing and totally diffuse it, and then carry on and continue on. And if they don't, and they continue to hit you with logical fallacies, then boom, you've shut their argument down because you keep pointing out that they're using logical fallacies.
Exactly.
But you have to have the level of understanding to be able to do all that. And again, it takes time. So the one thing I always urge people to do is don't just hear me talk about something on radio or on YouTube or wherever. Don't just watch a video I put up or anybody put up that they might put up on their channel or website and say, oh, he's 100% correct. Yes, I'm going to believe everything he says. Don't do that. I urge you and I challenge you to go do the research yourself. Don't believe me. Think I'm crazy. Think Oswald was a lone gunman and that he could certainly do the shooting with a gun that couldn't hit the broadside of a barn through a tree, and a moving target. Sure.
Exactly.
Even though he was a
I
medium
encourage
shot.
people to prove me wrong.
Yeah, please.
Do it. Prove me wrong.
I'd rather be wrong. I'd rather not be right that they
yeah,
did this.
please prove me wrong.
And
because
I don't make any money. I don't sell super male, enhancement juice. I don't sell pills. I don't sell water filters. I don't sell anything. So I don't stand to make any money doing a 2.5-hour show, right? Think about it.
Exactly.
I'm not making any money doing this. So I'm doing this because I'm trying to get you to think. I'm trying to challenge you to use your brain. I don't want you to believe everything I say either. I just want you to take a couple hours, listen to the broadcast, and then go out and try to prove me wrong. Try to prove Scott wrong. Try to prove the information that I've played in the audio I've played for you wrong. And you'll see, without a shadow of a doubt, that unfortunately I'm not wrong. Scott's not wrong, and neither is the evidence that it's just a small amount that I've played for you guys tonight, and you can see that you'll see once you do the research, it's mind blowing. So, but it is what it is. Anyway, we're gonna wrap it up, Scott. So, you have any final thoughts that you want to throw out there and lecture anybody with, like I just did?
I would say within the last 100 or so years, there are 3 things that you should look into. 1913, the establishment of the Federal Reserve, the assassination of JFK in 1963, and 9/11 in 2001. I think those are the 3 most cataclysmic events that have shaped our history and shaped where we are now within the past 100 years. And you just need to look into them. You just need to do your research. And I think if you look into those 3 events, you will wake up. you will realize that things are not as they seem currently.
Yeah, good point. Peter Dale Scott, I have it up on one of my YouTube channels. But I think it's in the JFK section too, or it might actually be it's either it might be in both. But there's also a 9/11 section on Federal Jack. If you go to federaljack.com, look up. There's a download tab on there. It'll open up the download archive page, and there's a couple different tabs to a couple different vaults, like archives. Like the JFK one, there's a bunch of ones. There's one for the police state, war, mind control, all in my archives. All the buttons are up there, and if you click on any of those, any one of those will bring you to that subpage, and then you can download. You better have a big hard drive. All I gotta say is there's probably well over 100 gig worth of information in there about all this stuff. And I urge you just to take the time to do the research. Get Audible. Look, it's worth. I have the simplest, cheapest plan. It's like $14.99 a month. I pay $15 a month. You get one free credit, which you can buy any book, and then you can buy credits, which are the best way to buy a book instead of paying the exact price for it. Because some books will be $5, and other books can be like $60. And either way, one credit gets the book. So I would use it if I were you. If you're driving a lot. If you're working out in your yard, you're doing a lot of stuff, and you want to read, or there's books you'd like to get into, but you don't have the time, do Audible. I mean, I wish I owned the company, but I don't. But I definitely do use them, and I know Scott uses them too. So, I mean, it helps me if I have to do something on the road, or if I'm out in the yard, or I'm doing something, whatever. If I'm working around the house, I can listen to ebooks. And I mean, you could ask Christina. I go through.
Yes, and if you can find alternative means to do it, then do so. I'm not going to promote alternative means, but yes, you can get audiobooks other ways.
Yes, yes, you could seriously find there are ways to do it, but I would suggest that you, however you do it, educate yourself. Knowledge is power. That's why I have the download section at federaljack.com. There's an ebook section there. As much as I can possibly offer the world in free knowledge, I will. Because that's what I'm about. That's why I do this. I do this so that people can, humanity can evolve and we can get out of the sandbox. And like I said earlier, the aliens and the rest of the universe look at us like we're monkeys in the zoo flinging poop at each other. So the only way to get past that is to grow up. We need to get out of the sandbox. And the best way to do that is to educate ourselves, admit to some of the bad things that have happened, and try to move on past it. Try to
we need to learn how to relearn how to use that Stargate behind our forehead and that quantum D wave that is behind our forehead. We've lost that ability. We need to learn how to do it again.
Agreed. We've lost so many abilities, Scott, but that's a whole nother show. Really. That's a whole nother friggin' show. However you need to educate yourself, read. And I'm not trying to discourage people from watching YouTube videos, but don't think that because you watched a YouTube video, you're now a genius and an expert. So we're clear. If you went like in a court of law, for instance, and you were going to testify, you're not considered an expert in your field unless you've been doing your work. And I think this is still the way it is. But even out in like the real world, you're not considered an expert in your field until you've been doing the job that you've been doing for 10 years. So one YouTube video does not an expert make. A capiche? Good.
Bingo.
Glad we're all on the same page. just saying. Anyway, I do want you to all go out and do the research. Don't ever believe anything you just hear. Research. Keep a level of skepticism in your brain. It's healthy. I'm not saying be one of those faux skeptics where you challenge everything, and I've taken those people on, like the guy I talked about from Georgia earlier, where his whole argument against anything I said or other people said was always the government's official version, and he would use the government, like links to government websites and stuff to back up what he said, and I'm like, well, that's not really backing it up. You're just using the source that I just went after. That's not bringing anything new to the table or bringing another credible witness to the stand. You're bringing the accused to the stand and saying, look, he said he didn't do it. That's what you're doing if this were a court of law. So that's not real skepticism. That's what I call faux skeptics. Real skepticism is you're looking outside the box because you don't trust the official version of events to begin with, but you're also skeptical about what information you come across and you verify. Trust, but verify, ladies and gentlemen. It's a good rule to follow. You can trust me and say, well, I trust Popeye enough to listen to him, but I need to verify what he just said to me because some of it maybe sounds crazy. And then you go out and do the research and you go, oh my God, he wasn't kidding. That's how it works. Like the old saying, you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Well, in this instance, the listeners and people that are researching, you'd be the horse, the river, the water, right? Life-flowing sustenance would be knowledge and truth. And I can't force you to partake of that truth. I can show you where it is. I can lead you through the forest to that river of truth. But you, ladies and gentlemen, have to drink from that river. I can't force your head into it. Otherwise, it won't work. There's my final thought for the evening. federaljack.com/JFK, PopeyeRadio.com. Of course, you're listening to me, DTRH Radio Archives. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. Do your research, ladies and gentlemen. Spend the time. Make the time. People say, well, I don't have time for that. Well, you better make the time for it because it's affecting your current situation and your future and your children's future. Understanding the past will help change the future. Past is prologue. Scotty, final thoughts?
No, I think you pretty much wrapped it up fairly well with a nice tight bow.
Awesome. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as I always say to you, I love you all. I know Scott does as well. And I have faith in you that you are all superheroes. I have faith in you that you can go out and you can change the world for the better. Like Mersey used to say, be the change. That's why I have it tattooed on the side of my neck. Go out and be the change that you wish to see in this world. Go out and be the superheroes I know every single one of you are. And remember, knowledge is power. I love all of you. Catch you all again soon.
Catch you on the flip side.